Yeah. I mean, you know, and I think that is massively important that people understand that they are, you know, they should have movement and things. Things like having strong hocks doesn't necessarily mean that they're never going to be able to rotate their rear feet out, or you know, there has to be.
No, it's still a dog at the end of the day, and that four square stance that you want is often something that has to be trained in. That doesn't become sloppy, that they just learn. And I think when you've had dogs a long time, then you're automatically conditioning your puppies to stand parallel, you know, front legs parallel, back legs parallel, and in a four square position. But when you have a freestanding dog, then often their legs can be all over the place until they learn what is actually required of you and how you actually want them to stand.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I think there's a lot more to assessing that than taking an unkind picture from the ringside. I mean, as a judge, you can feel how you know, how strong the front is, if you like, and by watching how they go into their stride, you can almost tell straight away whether or not they've got correct movement, because even a dog, you know, if you're turning it to move, it should be in a free stride within about 2 or 3 steps if it's a good moving.
But then you have the problem of small rings. I mean, sometimes you have rings which are so small that you only have 5 steps to cross to the other side. And especially if you have a lot of entries, then people are taking up space inside the ring. I always like it when they send people out of the ring and you just have the 2 or 3 that are next in turn. So you have more space to actually occupy the whole ring. But quite often we have championship shows where they try and crowd in so many rings into such a small space. And I find that such a shame. You pay all that money for an entry, you have all that expectation, you get to the show, you have all this space around the ringside, and then you look at your ring and you think, oh, okay. Especially if you have a male. I mean, and you do a big stride, then you do 5 steps and you've reached the other side and you have to turn around. So that doesn't really show off a golden's movement or allow it to get into stride and a long stride.
Yeah, I mean, it's very variable. And I mean, that's one of the advantages of the foreign system is that you can just have the 2 or 3 dogs in, you know, as one goes out, another one comes in. You've got very, very few in the ring. In the UK, you know, when we used to get those lovely big entries, the whole edge of the ring is full, and everybody's obliged to stay there unless the judge divides people, you know, them into 2 groups and you know, dismisses one group.
And then sometimes you have a really big ring. I remember going under mural aisles, and I mean, I love that woman, and we had this really big ring, and I think I had Jack as a puppy, and I was all thought, fantastic, she's a great moving dog, I can just stride out. And she was like, only halfway, my dear. She says, I don't want you going to Outer Mongolia, else I won't be able to see you. And I thought, oh no, we have a lovely big ring and I can only go halfway, and then I have to come back again.
Oh, no.
So you finally get the big ring and then you can't use it.
You'll laugh, we used to say with some of the older judges, they don't want you to go so far because they can't see you at the end. And that you know, that was really funny. But it's always difficult that if you've got a really good moving dog, you want that space to show that off, don't you? I always think that if you're standing your dog at the table for a judge, and that especially FCI shows, you have a judge writing critique, you also look at the judge and you think generally eyesight fails with age, so you need to stand further back from the judge for them to see your dog, because otherwise they don't see it as clearly if you're too close. So it's good to just stand back a bit and let them have a proper view.
So sorry to interrupt, but it's now 4:05, so you can begin now.
Okay, Anna, can I just ask you, can you see the full, is my slide?
No, well, we are not seeing it full. Just the image in center, and on the left you have all the pictures.
Pictures, yeah. Okay, tell me now. How's that?
Yeah, now it's perfect.
Okay.
Okay, bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much,
Thank you, Anna.
Yeah. So welcome from Midland Golden Retriever Club. We've long time since we've done a tea time chat, but we're really, really delighted to welcome Charmaine Ennis van Maren today to talk to you about Goldens and grooming. I think Charmaine's so well known both in the UK and across Europe that many of you have said how excited you are to hear this talk. And I really wanted to thank Anna and Ricardo again for helping to prepare it. It has been quite a big job to get it ready. So we're going to start by having a talk with Charmaine just about how she started in golden retrievers and her, her animal life. And then we are going to show a video that has been prepared. Now, it's very important, if you have any problems watching the video, we will give you a YouTube link, which will be in the chat facility. But please don't log out of Zoom if you need to use that link. Just leave Zoom on, go onto YouTube, and then come back at the end, because we're going to have the opportunity to ask questions and to talk about some of the things that you see. So welcome, Charmaine.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited about it. It's been, like you say, with lockdown, we've been in lockdown in the Netherlands. No shops open, and still restaurants are shut, and sports not going, so there's no shows here. So this is something to get excited about, and yeah, very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's been a really difficult time because we spend so much time at dog shows normally, and to have been deprived of them for quite a long time.
Yeah, it's not just the showing of the dogs, it's also the social, the chatting to your friends, and the sharing of experiences, and discussing various topics, and the traveling, the hotels. I mean, everything is around that situation of showing. So it's a bigger sport than just showing the dogs. I mean, it's become a way of life for many years. So when you're not allowed to do it, it's really tough. Changes your perspective on actually why you have so many dogs at home. So you're sort of looking at them all covered in mud, thinking nowhere to go. Why are you all here?
All dressed up, nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So let's just start now talking about you and your background in animals. I think the picture on the right hand side or the left hand side of the screen is you at 5, isn't it?
Yeah, that was me holding my first lion cub, which I then fed with a bottle. I was very excited. I've always had a deep passion for animals, all animals. I was a big fan of all those TV programs like Born Free with Elsa the Lion, Rin Tin Tin, Champion the Wonder Horse. There was all the Lassie films. I think National Velvet, International Velvet, Black Beauty, all those things really sparked my deep love of animals, especially Lassie. I would say that was one of my favorites. But I was born into a family which really didn't like dogs, didn't like dog hair, didn't like dog slobber. So as much as I kept asking, could I have a dog? The answer was always no. So always to Father Christmas, and on my wish list was, can I have a puppy? Can I have a puppy? Can I have a dog? And it never came around. We lived with my grandparents when I was younger, and they had 2 cats, which were called Candy and Cuddles. They were the first 2 cats. And they were followed by Samson and Delilah. They were all black and white cats. And my granddad bought me my first book all about cats on my 10th birthday. And it was quite an explicit book, all with reproduction and sexual organs and mating and genetics and all sorts. But actually, as a 10-year-old, I found it very, very informative, and it really made me want to learn more. And at that stage, I very much was absorbing all information and knew all sorts of facts, what was the tallest dog and all the different breeds and all the different groups. And Blue Peter was on the TV then. Yeah. And Blue Peter, I think, catered for a lot of dogless children, dogless homes which couldn't have dogs, and you could share in their dogs. You had Petra, you had Shep, you had Goldie, you had Bonnie. They had the Blue Peter puppies born, the litters, you could follow their progress. And also through Blue Peter, you had the Crufts winners being shown. And I remember very much watching an English setter, I think that was in 1977, I think that was called Bourne House Dancing Master. Yeah. And I thought that was just one of the most beautiful dogs in the world. I mean, I thought, wow, and they used to come and sit on the Blue Peter sofa and have that big, huge chalice and the big cup. And I thought, I really want to go to Crufts, but with my mum and dad, they weren't so keen. So I was very much already looking at dog shows and that other scene. And you obviously didn't have the internet then. So it was very difficult to find out any other information apart from what was in books.
Yeah, but you took your love of animals as you grew up. You went out and worked in riding stables and a boarding kennel in Cattery as your Saturday job, didn't you?
Yeah, my very first job was at a riding stables. We never got paid, but we could muck out all the stables and lead around horses with young kids on their backs who were learning to ride. So we just walked them round and round. And at the end of the day, we were allowed to ride them bareback to their field on a day halter and then just walk back and leave them in the. So that was our reward, was to ride them bareback to the field and work all day in the stables. So I did that. And then in 1980, we actually moved from London, where I lived, South London, to Purley in Surrey. And we lived down a road which was very dog orientated. It was just a cul-de-sac with houses on one side of the road only, along the A23. And the other photo is actually Mia, a Cocker Spaniel, which lived at number 5. We lived at number 3. And she was actually the first dog I ever groomed. I used to trim her feet and brush and comb her and feed her if they went out and have a key to look after her. So most people, I would say, and children were starting to do babysitting, and I was doing already a lot of dog sitting. It was quite a dog-friendly street. So we had a dog at number 1. That was a German Shepherd, a white German Shepherd cross. There was a dog at number 2. There was a dog at number 4, which was a little poodle. Eventually, I talked my mum into getting a cat and a rabbit and more rabbits and hamster, and I had mice, I had zebra finches, so quite a lot of different animals. But my main passion obviously was dogs. So this is me with my very first golden retriever, which was born in 1984, and my very first litter of puppies that I had, which was in 1986. And my first kitten that I had of my own, her name was Crystal. So I had her at home. We ended up having a few cats at home, but my sister doesn't really like cats. So the main thing was deciding on a dog. And I talked to my cousin into taking me to Crufts in 1979. There you can see my dandy that I showed. He won over 20 tickets. I used to hand strip him, and I actually picked him for my friends. They wanted to choose a dandy puppy, and we knew nothing really about dandies, but I loved this little chap for his personality. He was very, very outgoing, and he was very sound and foursquare, and he moved really well. So not knowing a lot about dandies, I picked we read through the standard and we listened to the breeder, but we very much picked the soundest, strongest, most perfectly moving puppy we could find. And he was so good at moving for a dandy. He had group wins. Like I say, he won over 20 tickets. He won his junior warrant. So that was a very deep passion of mine, was learning the art of hand stripping a dandy, because they have an unusual coat. So his name was Sene Kahuli, and he belonged to my good friend Sheila and Paul. So that was very special.
Special, yeah. Oh, he looks wonderful there. Yeah. So, and you also had an experience of working at Windmill Farm in Culdeston.
Yeah. When I was younger, like I said, we went to my first crufts in 1979. This was actually my first golden retriever and a shepherd, which I loved training him to climb trees and do all sorts of tricks. He actually belonged to a family down our road, and I used to borrow him a lot and take him for a walk. My mum said I could have a dog if I could pay for it myself. So I thought I need a job. So I went to work at Windmill Farm, which was a boarding kennels not so far away from us. And actually it was owned by Charles Cruft years and years and years ago, obviously. And he had a St. Bernard there, which is why there's a St. Bernard in the emblem of the Crufts logo. Because he actually had a St. Bernard. So Windmill Farm actually was originally owned by Charles Cruft. I worked there for about 3 years. It was owned by a vet, and his wife was a vet nurse. When I started, I was too young to work a whole day. I could only work the afternoons and get paid just £2 as it started. Then it went up to £5. And my £5 I used to save inside Joan Gill's book. I still have that book, so I saved there it is. I saved every £5 I earned in the pages of that book to have my golden retriever. And my first passion actually was a German Shepherd. I would love to have had a German Shepherd, but having a family which didn't really like dogs, I knew my mum would never agree to having a German Shepherd with their pointy ears. They looked a bit fox-like, they looked a bit wolf-like. They didn't really like black dogs. They was a bit scared. She wanted a little breed, like a Cock Spaniel, like Mia. And I thought, I want a big dog to hug. And my first cruft, like I said, was 1979 with my cousins. And when I went to that show, there was, the Best in Show was actually the Best in Show was a Kerry Blue Terrier shown by Don Munro. And 10 years later, in 1989, I was actually working for Don Munro at Arden Grange, which was a quarantine kennel. So I actually ended up working for him there. The following year, I went to crufts again, 1980, with my mum, my sister and my brother. And we went to decide on breeds. And we spoke to a very, very tall man. I was told to go and talk. He was the expert on retrievers. And that was actually David Hutchison's of the Waverton Affix. And he discussed the differences between all the retriever breeds and actually gun dogs, the setters, because I had already liked the English setter that I saw. So he talked about the differences, the exercise requirements, about Labradors, about flat coats and curly coats, which I quite fancied. And we all came to the decision that a golden retriever would be the ideal breed for us and what we needed. Mm-hmm. And then we went to watch the ring. And around the ring, they were actually doing the bitch ticket. And I saw the most beautiful bitch win the bitch ticket. I fell in love totally. I thought she was glorious, very, very feminine. And I bought my first Crufts catalogue. And on the way home on the train, because we could just get a train to Earl's Court, I actually saw that the breeder was, the owner of the dog was Joan Tudor. And Joan Tudor lived in Hawley, which was just literally half an hour from our home, just down the road. I was so excited. I said to my mum, it's so near. I mean, it's on literally the same road we're on, but just further down on the A23. So a bit later, I rung Joan Tudor and asked her for a puppy and said I was very, very interested in having a puppy. And she actually said I should buy a rabbit because I told her she wanted to speak to my mum. And I told her my mum didn't like dogs. And she said, well, if your mum doesn't like dogs, I think you should go and buy a rabbit. And I said, well, I don't want a rabbit. I already have a rabbit. I want a golden retriever. I want a puppy. Anyway, the puppy wasn't going to come from Joan Tudor. That was absolutely definitely sure. Yeah. So then I looked at the breeding of that dog, which actually was style Stephanie of Camrose. Mm-hmm. And I saw the breeder was Hazel Hinks. So my next approach was to approach Hazel. And I chatted to Hazel for quite some time. and she put me in touch with Daphne Philpott and also Mary Johnson, who had Style Simone. And I ended up getting a granddaughter of Style Simone. Simone was the sister of Stephanie and Susilla. Also at that first Crufts, I bought a whole heap of Dog World annuals, the Our Dog annuals, the Dog World annuals, Golden Retriever yearbooks. In one of the annuals was this picture, which I fell in love with, of all those Golden Retrievers having their Yorkshire puddings. And I thought one day I would love not just to have a puppy, which I want to, but I would love to have that many Goldens. And you can see on the other side are our own Goldens waiting for their carrots, not quite Yorkshire puddings. So my dream from 1980 of having a whole load of Goldens to look at me with those adoring brown eyes finally came true.
And these were the Janville kennel, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So probably quite.
That photo was just in the Dog World annual, and I just fell in love with it. And I thought, wow. I mean, how rich can you be to have all those Goldens looking at you with those loving brown eyes? And it was then not just to have one dog; it was to have lots. And being with Bart, that was something I was able to do. And then I have mine the other side.
And this...
I actually got my shepherd eventually. So I've had 3 shepherds. I had Kyra in 1987, and this is my lovely Kane, who was born in 1997. He is very, very special. He was like my soulmate, my friend, my shadow. He could take biscuits from my mouth very gently. I mean, he was just adorable. So yeah, it's very, very sweet.
Were you still living at home then, Charmaine?
No. Then I had my own place.
Right.
I already had my kids. I think my sons were 6 and 7 when he was born.
Yeah.
So,
looks lovely. So yeah, and there's your Joan Gill book.
There's my Joan Gill book, which I still have on the shelf behind me up there. There are all our books. So that's a very, very precious one. Daphne actually was a great help. That was my photo of Maybella, which I saw her win at Windsor when she won the Bitch CC, and I thought she was just glorious. I went to Daphne's house with my mum, and we chatted all about Goldens and about dogs, and I very much wanted something from Maybella or from Marta or from those lines, and I ended up with my first Golden being from Samuel, and my second Golden being from Wesley Munro. So it sort of follows suit. Underneath is a photo of Ramona, Wesley Ramona, who probably was my all-time favourite bitch along with Maybella. I thought they were absolutely glorious. And in my wardrobe as a kid and a teenager, instead of having pop stars, as most people do inside their cupboard doors, I had Maybella on one side and I had Scott on the other. And I used to just look at these Golden Retrievers, and they were my pin-ups. Yeah. So they're very much were dogs I wanted. This was my grooming salon. I had my first grooming salon in 1996. And then in 2002, I actually changed to a hydrotherapy pool along with a grooming salon. So I did a lot of training to become a canine hydrotherapist, did some training courses, seminars and various things. I was already a veterinary nurse, which I have been for about 5 years. And I wanted to pursue that, which was a wonderful, wonderful time. We had 9 staff, so there was a lot of staff. And I did a lot of teaching for students to become groomers themselves.
Yeah.
So that was a huge...
So one of the funny things that sort of came out was all your love of the Wesley, but also you'd seen my Style Snowflake as a... That
was actually when I went to Hazel's house, which was really unusual.
Yeah.
But when I went to visit Hazel one time, she had 3 litters together.
That's right.
And one of the puppies at that time was actually Snowflake as a baby, which was ironic that I then went on to have Jasmine, which came from Snowflake later on. But it wasn't, the time wasn't right for me to actually buy a puppy. And I was just chatting to Hazel, but I went there to see her and her dog, and she had Teabag, and yeah, I loved her girls. Yeah. And I very much wanted that style bitch line again. My own bitch that I had bought in 1984, which was from Wesley Samuel. Her mother, like I said, was a granddaughter of Style Simone, which was the sister of Cecilia and Stephanie. And I used Sturchley Saxon from Graham and Bender Hall. They were also a huge influence with me. Brenda was just one of the loveliest ladies to talk to, and very, very helpful with my first litters who had Sturchley Saxon. And I very much wanted something with that style bitch line again. So from my original bitch, unfortunately, despite the fact she had 4 litters, we never went on with her progeny for one reason or another. I had a litter to Saxon, her daughter had a litter to Conspiracy. She ended up with a Pio, one ended up absorbing. We had Sunkissed, which was mated to Augustus, and she just had 7 boys, no girls. So for various reasons, we didn't have any progeny. And then my daughter ended up with a Pyometra and needed to be sterilized. So I was looking to buy another. And I saw your Shelley at the LKA winning, well, Dorothy's Shelley, should I say, but bred by you, winning at the LKA. And I just fell in love with her. I just thought, wow, that's one fantastic bitch. And then looked in the catalogue and saw her breeding and thought, wow, she has a style bitch line.
That's spooky.
Yeah, that's very spooky, because not only do I love her, but she has exactly the bitch line I want. And I remember chatting to you at that show and saying, if ever you repeat it, I'd be really interested. At that point, you didn't know if you were going to or not. But speaking to you later on, you had repeated it.
Yeah. And I actually bought together the style and the Wesley line in this breeding.
Yeah.
It was originally one of my plans to do that, but I'd had a bit of a setback because the dog that I bought to mate to Snowflake ended up with hip dysplasia. Okay. And so I wasn't able to do that combination. So I did some other breeding, and then a couple of generations later on went on and used a Wesley dog, and I think had 2 fantastic litters. With lovely quality and things. And you obviously you had Jazz, and
Jazz was very special. I mean, she was very special to my kids. My older son, he really liked Aladdin and Princess Jasmine, so she was called Jasmine. She was just the dog with the hugest heart. And through my grooming and all my friends, I mean, she just had a huge fan club of friends and people who loved her, and she just enjoyed showing, and she was such a foodie. I mean, she loved food, so she would do everything for food. So she was very happy to naturally freestand, and she was a very big girl. So I remember at Pup of the Year, actually, we had foot and mouth then, so she never got her junior warrant because of the foot and mouth. We couldn't go to shows. This is actually her at 11 years old, winning the Dog of the Year in Holland. She not winning the Dog of the Year, but she won to compete in the Dog of the Year. So she's 11 years old then, and still freestanding, wagging and showing impeccably. She won her first ticket at only 22 months from yearling, and then she had her first litter at only 3 years old. Because she was quite big and very playful, I never wanted to mate her too early. And then she actually won a ticket between every litter. She went on to have 4 litters. And she won a lot of her tickets. She won 10 tickets and all, but a lot were won as a veteran. A lot were won when she was older. I think one of the most special was her crowning ticket under Yvette Manning's, because I found Yvette Manning's a wonderful breeder, a wonderful exhibitor, a lovely lady. I very much liked her Gatchell's dogs and her Gatchell's bitches. And so I was very honoured to have won that CC with Jasmine under her. I think also to win under Sandra Birkin, going back to those Sansu lines, and because Jazz is line bred to ruler, that also was very special, because then you just feel they can appreciate the quality she had. This was her coming to Europe at 10 years old. Most dogs are retiring at 10 years old, and Jasmine just came to Europe because I'd met Bart. And we decided we would not put her in the veteran classes. We would show her in the champion classes. and see if we could get her Dutch title. Well, that was a huge aim, a 10-year-old bitch. But she did get her Dutch title, and she also won her German title, and she won her VDH title, and she won groups. Yeah. And this is actually her winning the group. Yep. She actually won Best Veteran in Show at that show.
And she wasn't just fantastic as a show dog, was she? She really produced.
She was the top brood for 4 years. This is her at 15, actually, on that photo. If you go back one, this was her at 11 at a show. This is her at 15. Yeah. She lived till she was 15, and she enjoyed the sea, she enjoyed the beach, she just enjoyed everything. She was amazing. I can never thank you enough for this girl. And I would say this is her with her daughters. So we have Jasmine on the far right. Next to her is Jade, which is her daughter from Erindary Just the Ticket. And then Jerry in the middle, which is her daughter from Xanthos Fletcher Christian. And on the end is Jack, and she was from Lock Tamer, King of Diamonds. Yeah. So she had 4 very special daughters.
And I think it's a huge credit to you that you were able to get her back into condition after having litters. To have
I think what helped was having the pool and the fact she could go swimming.
Yeah,
that really tightened up the undercarriage and got her. She loved swimming. You could actually just leave. We had jets in our pool, so the jets push against the dog, and the dog has to swim forward. And if you just left a little sandwich or a piece of food on the side of the pool, she would just swim for 20 minutes looking at the food, but could never reach it. So she was just powering away. And then we'd turn the jets off, let her have the food, and she could get out. So, but she loved swimming. She was a great swimmer. This is her daughter Jade, who also won the Amsterdam winner and became a German champion and a Danish champion and a Dutch champion. And Jade was actually bought by Bart in 2000. She was born in 2005, and that's how actually Bart and I got to know each other. So this is my very first homebred champion, which is George Ramchain Rubelite. Jazz was the first champion I actually made up in Golden Retrievers. Yeah. And one night I was walking around the fields next to our home, and I was calling the dogs, and I thought it was Jasmine in the twilight with this silhouette of a dog, but it actually was George. And I thought, well, if that's your outline on the move, then I can make you up as well because you look great. So then was my campaign to show her. She won the United Retriever Club Best in Show. She won the Reserve CC under Hans Lettinen, and Jasmine won the CC that day. So I won the Bitch CC with Jazz and the Reserve CC with George under the Swedish judge Hans Lettinen, which was a big honour too, because he's quite an influential and a very respected judge. This is Jade winning the group. Yeah. This was another group win, and this is Vogue, who also had a fantastic career. Vogue was going to and from England to Holland. It was the first dog that Bart and I bought together. So she was going backwards and forwards. Mm-hmm. So that was also very, very special. She got her junior warrant in England, and then we'd take her over on the boat and she'd show in Luxembourg or Germany here. She was the European winner and won all sorts of awards here. Yeah. This is Vogue again, lying with our son when he was little, and our son playing with Goldens. Temperament. I think Temperament is one of the most important things we need to preserve in our breed. So
absolutely.
For me, it doesn't matter how many wins they have and what all they can do if their temperament is not good. Our standard says biddable and friendly, and biddable and friendly is actually what they should be. This chat is and the presentation we do is about grooming. And I know from having many years working as a professional groomer, in most salons, they dread to see a Golden Retriever in the diary, especially the boys. So many boys are obnoxious, they're uncooperative, They don't want to be dried. They don't want their feet done. They don't want to lie down. They don't want to turn around. They're not biddable, and they're not openly friendly. So I think it's very important when choosing combinations, choosing what stud dogs you need, that you have a golden which can be in harmony with other goldens, live in a group. They should never need to be separated, that are not fearful, that love children, that love people, that love each other, and that do what they're told. We have a lot of dogs together, and they just have to listen. So if I say down, then I would just like them to lie down. If I want to call them in, I want them to come in. I don't want a dog not to listen. I expect it to behave straight away and to be sensible. And I think it's very, very important that temperament is kept upmost, along with health, construction, all the other things you're doing. But it's a huge factor, and a big factor I think a lot of people override. But for me, it's vital. It's vital for our breed. What makes our breed, that you have. I mean, when I was choosing which breed to have for my mum and my sister, it was the temperament of a golden retriever which made me choose a golden retriever above other breeds. Because you can have, or we can have, 9, 10, 11 dogs in our kitchen, just step over them. They're perfectly laid back, they're perfectly easy, they're perfectly relaxed. You go to the beach or you go to the dunes and they run around and they play, they come back in and they just lie down and relax. They're not a hyped up breed, and they listen. They jump in the car when they're told, they jump out the car and they wait when they're told.
And I think it's absolutely paramount. That's why golden retrievers are famous, really, is their lovely temperament. And as you say, it's often totally overlooked in breeding plans and health tests and things.
If you go back to their origins as a gun dog, if you had a gun dog which didn't sit by your side and listen, and it ran in, it could get shot by the gun. It could do serious damage and upset a shoot completely. So from the beginning, they were a dog which were biddable. I mean, that was an essence of the breed, to just be steady, to not make a fuss, to be able to just go in the back of a Land Rover or a vehicle with other Goldens, not create a fight. I mean, so many people who have Goldens and they can't get on with another dog. It's not typical for the breed. It's not typical for a gun dog. They should get on as a group, and they should do what they're told.
So moving on, this little puppy.
This is the puppy that Bart bought from me, and
the collision of two addicts, I think.
It was, and it was rather weird because I am I'm very good with scissors, but I'm really, really bad with technology. I sort of have a button phobia. So when it comes to computers and emails and all those things, that's not me. Bart had emailed for a puppy, and I hadn't replied. I actually had my hydrotherapy pool at that point in 2005, and my admin lady actually used to receive all my emails, all my private emails, all my emails, and while I was swimming dogs, she would come down to the shop and she would read me all my emails, and I would tell her what to reply. And I remember her saying, "There's a Dutch man asking me again for a puppy." And I said, "Well, I don't know him, don't worry." So I never replied to his emails, and then he phoned me. And I thought, "I don't know who you are." But he was very persevering, and said he had some dogs from Belfast and very much wanted a style bitch line, and very much like the Wesleys, and had a lot of similarities with me. I mean, my first dog was Norraven Rowena, which was by Samuel and Norraven Melissa. And he actually had a brother, full brother, also by Samuel and Norraven Melissa. I had used Sturchley Saxon, and he actually had Saxon's brother, which was Seth. He actually had quite a few Highlander brothers, sisters that he had bought from Val. And then obviously I had Jazz, and I had Jenna, who also was a Highlander daughter. So we had a lot of the similar connections in our beginnings, which was rather interesting. So yeah, Barnum was a bit like our Cupid's arrow. He came to stay with me in England, and within 6 months I had made him up into a UK show champion. And for the last CC, Bart really wanted to be there for that CC and watch him become the first Dutch English champion. So he came on every show, and that's when we actually got together and fell in love, and then we got married. And when we were deciding to get married, we thought, do we get married in England with my family? Do we get married in Holland with his family? And we thought, why not get married in Scotland? That's where the breed actually began. So we had been for our first date, because when you're seeing somebody only at dog shows, that doesn't really give you an idea if you can get on to actually make life-changing decisions. So our first date was actually in Scotland, and Bart took me to Tomic, and we went there and we saw the house, and what a great place to get married.
I believe from one very special judge that day that she was heartbroken because you had actually got best of breed and hadn't stayed for the group because you'd gone off on this date with this man. And I got a load of grief about that.
we had our romantic rendezvous in Scotland, which was and this was actually at our wedding. I couldn't have imagined a better setting. I mean, it was magical actually to have that house behind us and all that history behind. So they were two very, very mad golden retriever people. Being mad golden, that was in the London Eye. We had that on one of our dates when we were in England. Yeah. Being two mad golden retriever people, Bart had his dogs, I had my dogs, which meant when we actually came together, we had double the amount of dogs. So we had rather a lot, and that meant a lot more management to keep them mentally sound and physically sound and happy, having a big group. So this is when I was pregnant with Sebastian, with Vogue, which is the first dog we bought together, and Jade, which is the puppy Bart bought from me, and then actually a dog I got back again because we ended up getting married. So that was quite weird. Jade also went on till she was almost 15. She died 2 years ago actually, and a huge hole because she has been here the whole time I've been in Holland, and very, very sweet girl, very sweet girl. Yeah. And this was fun, winning and us judging in Russia. Both Bart and I can give CCs and golden retrievers and judge in various countries in the UK. Showing is a big passion for us. So this was at the Centenary show, where we had some dogs. So yeah. Well,
so let's move on now, Charmaine, and watch the video that you have worked so hard with Bart and Ricardo on. So please don't log out of Zoom. If you have problems watching, if you go onto the chat function, there is a link there for a YouTube where we will show the video in tandem. We're hoping that you'll be able to see it fine watching on Zoom, but if you don't, watch it on YouTube and then come back in at the end, where there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now and hand over to Ricardo. Is that okay? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Charmaine. I'm going to talk about some trimming of golden retrievers. This is Leaf. She likes holding towels and playing towel games. This is actually her son. He is 8 months old. You can see he's quite dark because he has a very dark father. He is not bathed. He is not clean. He's been running around playing outside. So he is not a dog I would trim until he's actually bathed and cleaned, because for me you really ruin your scissors if you work on a dog that is dirty. I have had dogs since 1984. That was my first one. I have been a professional dog groomer since 1986. I've had 3 salons while I was in England, 3 professional grooming salons. grooming all breeds, sometimes 18 to 22 dogs a day. Golden Retrievers obviously is a passion of ours, and we have quite a lot of dogs here at home. I now live in the Netherlands because I'm married to Bart, who is Hellacious Acres. I am Ramchain, and I started off in England. Together we have had 7 UK show champions. What else? I have worked as a veterinary nurse for over 5 years. I have worked as a canine hydrotherapist with my own heated pool for over 5 years. And between the ages of 13 and 18, I worked in 3 different boarding kennels and catteries looking after dogs. So I would say I'm quite dog mad. And this is just my opinion on grooming. That just like writing, just like lots of things, there are different ways of doing it, and that's okay. Basically, it's the end result that you need. So if your finish is good and your end result is good, how you got there doesn't actually matter, but I show you how I do it.
That'll be just. And then you have to pay on also.
I would not trim a dirty dog, and also it ruins your scissors, makes them blunter much quicker if the coat is not clean which you are cutting. So very important is your bathing. There are all different types of shampoos. Some work better on different coats, so I would say you have to experiment a bit about what shampoo you want to use on your dog. Some make the coats too heavy, some make them too flat. The number of times you shampoo depends on how dirty the coat is. So for me, a dog needs a pre-wash, and then a good shampoo, and then conditioner, and then another shampoo, and then thorough rinsing. It's always best to use warm water. In fact, the hottest water that you think your dog is comfortable in. If you are doing the washing up at home and you are cooking and you've used a saucepan to make chili con carne or spaghetti bolognese or something like that, which is rather greasy, you would never try and wash your saucepans in cold water or lukewarm water because it just won't get clean. So it's best to use warm water. Warm water also opens the pores of the skin and opens the follicles of the hair shaft. So it allows the shampoo in. So the warmest water possible, shampoo your dog, rinse it off. If it's dirty, shampoo again and rinse it off. The rinsing, it has to be very thorough. Rinse, rinse, rinse. Can't stress that enough. So my favourite shampoo for show dogs is actually John Frieda. But as we're in lockdown, there are no shows, so nobody gets John Frieda. I also quite like coconut shampoo. The Klitschko's Janssen is a very good make. They do Spectrum 10, they do Day to Day, they do a gold on gold for the darker dogs, and they do a white on white for the paler dogs. Also good. Anyway, when you have baths once, twice or 3 times, according to how dirty and how much hair loss, you need to put conditioner on the dog. Again, experiment with your conditioners. Some make the coat really too heavy. So once you have covered your dog in conditioner, then you need to rinse the conditioner off, and then I always do a final shampoo, which is what we're up to now, because I find conditioner on the coat makes the coat far too silky, far too soft, far too heavy, and that's not a normal texture for a golden retriever. So after the conditioner, I then do a shampoo to wash most of the conditioner off. Also, if you're cutting the coat and it has conditioner on the hair, it makes the hair very slimy and much more difficult to actually trim the dog. The first shampoo often just gets rid of the dirt in the coat and breaks the tension, because there should be some natural grease which makes the coat weatherproof. So it's always good to shampoo a second time and make sure you go backwards through the hair so you can actually see skin. Often if you just go over the top, then actually the underneath is dry and the undercoat is dry. So you need to get the shampoo right down and just really massage with your fingers and go backwards through the coat. So you work in that shampoo right into the skin and the base of the coat and the undercoat, as well as just the top coat. Because if you just go over the top, then the undercoat often is still dry underneath and you get patches of dry bits. So try and see the skin. And make sure in all sections you really give it a good old massage with your fingers, not just the palm of your hand or the flat hand. Conditioner I always like to use neat on my hands and rub it into the coat, but the shampoo I already use diluted. So about up to there on a bottle, and then just fill it up with water until the whole bottle is full. It's a bit like pouring a pint. If you aim the water to the sides of the bottle, you don't get the froth. If you just pour the water straight in, then you get a bottle full of bubbles and not a lot of shampoo. So not too much pressure on the water, and just fill it from the sides, and then you can actually fill it right to the top and give it a good shake, and then you already have diluted shampoo to put on the dog. Do as many shampoos as you think you need to get lovely shiny white bubbles. Shiny bubbles, that's what you want. So with most it is 2 shampoos, sometimes even 3. If you've just been to a show and your dog's already clean, maybe you just need 1 quick shampoo to spruce it up. You really have to learn to feel with your fingers and the coat texture to find out how many shampoos you need to get the right finish off the coat. But you really want the bubbles to be white and shiny, and when you rinse, the water to be clean and not still get dirt off the coat. while your dog is in the bath, it's a very good point to actually check your dog all over. So when I'm actually doing the shampoo, I actually totally feel the dog, feel its ears, feel how thick the ear flap is, feel its head, check its teeth, whether the teeth actually need to be cleaned, check the side teeth, check right back to the back teeth, check the gums, check your dog's colour, so you press and see the refill in the gums. Your ears you can clean after. Some dogs have too much skin, they should be quite tight-lipped, so they have a curl in their skin here, and that can trap saliva and food, so that needs to make sure that that is actually clean. Check all the way down, check your dog's lymph glands, which are here, just so you know, because they're a good indication when your dog's not well that they grow bigger, and then you actually know what the normal size is. Feel your dog all over, feel down its bones, feel between every toe, so you know exactly what your dog feels like. Feel in its elbows, under its chest. If it's a girl, feel every single mammary gland on both sides. If it's a boy, feel his penis and his testicles. Check around the vulva. Feel all the bones and the joints. So I'm feeling the knee joint, I'm feeling the hock joint, I'm feeling the back toes. You obviously would feel the elbow, feel the rib cage. Check your loin. If you feel right down the tail, feeling the bone, feel underneath, and check the anus. If you check over your dog all the time, you know what's normal. Then you can also spot when it becomes abnormal, and if there's a little bump or a growth and how big it grows. Okay. When you have finished rinsing the dog and all the soap is out, then you need to check and rinse again, and then check and rinse again. You don't want any traces of shampoo in the coat, because that could cause itchiness and skin problems. So make sure the shampoo is totally out, and then change your water to gradually going cold. A bit like if you've had a sauna, you then jump in a cold shower. The cold water will tighten the pores of the skin and also tighten and shut down the hair shaft, which actually makes the coat much, much shinier, the skin much healthier, and is much, much better for the dog. There are two types of nozzles for your blaster. You can have a flat head or you can have a round head. So you have to find out which is the one that you like best. Basically you want to blow up the front, you want to flatten the coat, and you want to blow in trousers, maybe blow in stifle. So you just have to see the shape of your dog, where you want to aim the dryer, if you're doing it that way or you're doing it that way. A lot of dogs get what I call a halo on the top of their head. The more you cut this, the worse it grows. So actually it's best to put chalk on your fingers or a latex glove, or just to wet them a bit, and pull those hairs out, because then they regrow much tighter. Just a few at a time. So if your dog is growing a halo, then I would say every few days, just pull a few, and gradually you get rid of it. If your blow drying skills are not so good and you can't quite get the coat flat and the way you want it, then it's good to bath your dog and towel it dry it the best you can, and then put a t-shirt on it or a neck curtain, like a cape, like a Batman cape, or you can get all sorts of dry coats that help keep the coat flat. It's important, if the dog is wet or damp underneath, not to leave the coats on for too long, because they can encourage hot spots. So if the coat is really thick like this one, then it's good to put a dry coat on, or a towel, or a t-shirt, or a neck curtain to help the coat go static and lie flat. We're going to talk about grooming and grooming your golden retriever. The most important thing to remember when you are grooming a dog is every dog is different, and what works for one dog and one golden retriever might not work for your dog and other golden retrievers. It's also important to understand your own capabilities as a groomer. So what you can do and what somebody else can do can be very different. There are no real magic scissors, there are magic hands. So you need to understand the different methods and ways of achieving that final goal, and there are various ways to get there. We have all sorts of different equipment. Again, it's best to use what you're comfortable with and what gives you the results you need. So I personally like flat combs. I like them to have wide teeth and medium teeth, or to have medium teeth and narrow teeth. It sounds really stupid, but there are some combs, and I'm going to show you this one, that actually just don't work. So you can comb the dog, but you really don't get the hair out or the finish compared to other combs, which are brilliant. This is one of my favorites. I quite like greyhound combs. They're very good quality metal, and they really get through the coat, lift the coat, and get out the undercoat, so they're able to work very well. We have a tooth scaler, if you're brave enough to actually scale your own dog's teeth and try and scrape off the tartar. Maybe only start with 1 or 2 teeth at a time and then work up to doing more. You can do it regularly. Also a tick pick, that's very handy if you see a tick, to be able to just hook it off and twist it off. We have tick picks everywhere. Slickers, there are all sorts of different slickers. Some are very soft to touch and others are a bit harder. Some are angled, some are cushioned, so it's good at looking at different slickers to help break up the feathering of your dog and get out bits of garden. Nail clippers, these are the plier type. I prefer these smaller ones in my hands. I find I'm in far more control at working around the dog's feet and nails than the bigger ones. When I started, I always used to use the Resco guillotine nail clippers. They cut on one side of the blade, and these actually cut both sides of the blade. It's always best to do little and often. I prefer to cut nails after a dog's had a bath because the nails are softer, just like with yourself. If you do them when they're dry, they can often be brittle and they can maybe split, and then maybe it's a good idea to also use a nail file and file down the rough edges. We have bristle brushes. I like pure bristle brushes, not the nylon ones. They're very good for moulding the hair, especially after you have dried the dog, or when the hair is just damp and you need to mould the dog's hair in the direction you want. Sorry, I'm trying to talk to you and this one wants to cuddle at the same time. So you have different brushes. This one actually is a nylon. It's actually a horse brush, but it's very good at brushing out, making the dog's coat static on purpose to brush out flakes of skin if your dog has ICT. So that's actually quite handy when the dog's clean to use. But again, you have to practice different things. Scissors. Don't necessarily need expensive scissors, especially if you're not good at cutting. You just ruin expensive scissors. So there are all sorts. These are just Mickey scissors. They're rather cheap, probably about £8, not so expensive. These are Roseline scissors. This is Art Studio. These little scissors are good for trimming the feet. Here are some slightly bigger, or you can have even longer, which are good for cutting tail feathering and leg feathering if you needed to. We have single-sided thinners and we have double-sided thinners. Again, go for a make that is not so expensive. So something like Roseline is really quite good value for money. And if you become really good at doing what you're doing, then you can buy more expensive scissors. But most people have what I call sideways pressure when you cut. So if you have expensive scissors, then actually you just ruin them. So it's this is a squeeze towel, like the wet and dry towels, where actually you can just squeeze the water in when you've bathed a dog. We like to bath our dogs every month. I like to cuddle and kiss a clean coat, so I don't really want to cuddle or kiss a smelly dog. And if you're grooming, it's always much, much easier to groom a clean coat. Coat Kings and Furminators. They're actually dreadful tools. Dreadful tools for golden retrievers, dreadful tools for flat coats and other retrievers, dreadful tools for spaniels, but useful if you have a neutered dog with a woolly sterilised coat. They should not be used on entire dogs. So not for youngsters, not for adults which have not been castrated or spayed, sterilised. They actually get rid of the coat very, very well. I mean, they're very effective in their job. They do a very fast job at removing hair and give a very neat appearance. The problem is with the regrowth. The regrowth comes back with a vengeance. It comes back quicker and quicker. It grows faster, woollier. These teeth drag out hair and break hair. They're actually blades, and they really ruin the coat texture. You can end up with really coarse coats, all sorts of sprouts and guard hairs. You have different widths. They're brilliant. I mean, I've used them on Newfoundlands, I've used them on flat coats, I've used them on Cocker Spaniels, English Springers, American Cockers, our own neutered spayed females. It can work wonders in giving an appearance of a beautifully neat coat, but it's the regrowth that is a problem. So it really shouldn't be used on anything you want to show, and preferably not a young dog, because then the coat growth gets worse and worse and you are grooming more and more frequently. So a useful tool for the elderly, a useful tool for dogs, I would say, of 9 years plus, and those that are retired from the ring, but definitely not, please, on your beautiful golden retriever with its beautiful coat. like to start with trimming feet with the dog actually lying down. Most of ours will fall asleep while I trim their feet. Of course, you can trim feet while they're standing up. That's yours. It's good to have a little pair of scissors that are sharp. So you can try various, 4 inch, 4.5 inch or 5 inch. Start with the outer edge of the foot. Go around the outside of the pads. You can use your thumb to separate toes. So you want to go around all the edges of the foot. Again, I'm using my finger to separate those toes so I can get this inside edge and that inside edge. Even our puppies learn to just fall asleep when I do their feet. The underneath is best just leveled. You can scoop out right from the bottom and get rid of all the hair like I'm doing now, but that actually gives the dog then no protection when it's walking on stones or uneven ground or glass, because that hair also acts as protection. So here I'm scooping out all the hair from underneath, but my recommendation actually is to just trim it level with the pads. It does mean you have to trim your feet more often because it grows quicker. And this back edge. The rear pastern and the front pastern is really dependent on the bone of the dog. What I don't like is when people do the pasterns too short and then you have a real, what I call, nipped in wrist. So it's good to comb the hair up and either with your little scissors hover across and go straight across, or you can actually use your single-sided thinners and go across basically to the stopper pad. But the length of your pastern depends on where you would actually trim. So if you had a dog which had very high stopper pad and a very long pastern, actually you'd only trim this section. And if you had a dog which had a stopper pad already here and a very short pastern, then you would actually trim past the stopper pad to make the pastern look as if it's longer. So that's a little bit of the deception of trying to get the ideal proportions of your dog. So again, I'm hovering over the top to give a fatter pastern. I personally don't like too much hair around this dew claw nail bed, so I'm also thinning that off. The rest of the pastern you can actually do standing up, because that probably gives you a better indication of how long you actually want your pasterns to be. So for a pet dog, yes, you can just trim up to the stopper pad, but for a show dog, then I would do it according to the length of the leg. Tufts between the toes. I pull them up with my fingers. I gave her a pillow, but she doesn't want a pillow. She'd rather just lie on the table. And then comb them up with your scissors. And then with single-sided thinners, you can just thin off those tufts to neaten the foot. Those have grown quite long. Often around the nails gets rather messy, so if you want to trim the foot, it's good to actually push those nails back, and then you can trim the front of the foot. So I'm pushing the nails back. Here I'm using straight. And then basically you just use your thinners to get the neat finish you want. Again, I'm opening out her toes there to get some of those very long bits inside. Depending on how tight your dog's foot is, you might want to leave more and just make the tufts shorter from the top. because otherwise if their feet splay out, then you get big gaps between the toes. But that very much is dependent on how well your dog is exercised and what type of muscles it has in its toes to create a cat type foot. So make sure you hover across the top and not actually go into what I call the actual foot hair. Going to the top foot again, around the edge of the pad. Open the toes out to go inside. If they learn to sleep, then you haven't got a battle on your hands with the dog that's always fidgeting. The good thing with trimming and trimming feet, and well, trimming in general, is the hair will always regrow. So you can always just practice. If it goes wrong, it will regrow and you can try again. If you were sculpting with a bit of wood, then obviously if you took too much wood off, you have to start again with a new piece of wood. I mean, the good thing with hair is it always regrows. So if you make a mistake, it doesn't matter. You just wait for it to grow and you start again. I feel much more in control of the dog if they're lying down than if they're standing and dancing on their feet, and I worry I might cut pads. So I'm going around all the edges. Again, it's better to just level this hair underneath, because then if the dog stands on stones or glass, it's protected. If you don't trim regularly, then maybe it's knotted inside, or you get grass seeds, or there's little stones or chewing gum, and all sorts can get stuck in that hair. So it's good to do it regularly. Again, with the front feet, push those toes back, and then you can cut across the front. And tidy around the nail beds. And then up go the tufts. Comb them up too. There's the double-sided thinners and the single-sided. The single-sided is more for finer work, so they're very good for the feet. So here we go again with our single-sided thinners to just take off those tufts. When the dog's standing, sometimes I blow dry the feet just to make sure anything you've missed is blown upwards, and you can check it and then get rid of it. Again, I'm going around the nail bed and using my fingers to open out the toes so you can get the overlong hairs. Make everything neat and tidy and level. The pastern again, you see her stopper pad. I'm going to use single-sided thinners to thin that pastern off. Comb again all your hair. And again, I'm hovering over the top. Maybe you can see it that way. You want to hover from the pad and not scoop it out short. Never cross the hair. Always go against the hair growth or with the hair growth. You can also use the straight scissors. Just trim it across here. I'll use those because I find those better. And then you have, so if I go to her stopper pad, then I would make a cut from this pad to that pad with, you can have a look, you've got space underneath. I can actually fiddle with feet for ages because I love precision feet, so I might be there for a long time doing little bits, making sure all the edges are neat and tidy. Nails. Our dogs have quite a lot of exercise on hard ground and different surfaces, so their nails are quite short. But when you're cutting nails, it's good to cut the tip, the other one side, and then the other side. So it's three-way cutting. 1, 2, 3. Little tiny slithers. Don't cut a whole big chunk of the nail like that because you might catch the quick. Little tiny bits are always best. Just a tiny slither. And then if you did go too close to the quick, you've only done a tiny bit and not actually done like this and done a whole chunk of the nail. The nails are actually quite short now, thank you. So just little bits. If you butt up right to the quick does retract and go back. So it's good to do the nails on a regular basis. And then hopefully you end up with nice short nails and a better shaped foot. If the nails grow very long, often the toes go longer and you end up with a hair type foot. So just tiny, tiny slithers. I mean, they're absolutely really tiny. And don't forget your dew claws. This one, and then you can see that hair around that dew claw, which actually I don't like at all. So I'm going to use my thinners. To get rid of it. Always check your work with a comb. Comb it upwards. Don't comb it and fold it to look nice. You actually always want to go against the grain and brush up and use your fingers to go up to actually check for all the bits that poke out. Like that bit just now. Back feet. Again, go around the edges of the pads. Cutting back feet, the nails are the same. Just take tiny, tiny slivers off the tips and off each edge. The tufts you need to comb up and pull up. So first I'm pulling them up with my fingers. Then I'm going to comb up, and then with my single-sided thinners, just thin off all the tufts. First getting rid of the main length and then just neatening all the little straggly bits so you have a nice neat cat shaped foot. Again, I'm pushing the toes apart so you can get all the way around, and it's more of a hovering action over the top of this short hair, so you're not actually cutting into the short foot hair, you're only taking out those long tufts which stick out and spoil your neat foot. If you have little bits, you can use your little scissors to push back the toes and get those front ones, and to tidy up around the nail beds with all those little bits that come. The pastons. The pastons are done very differently for different people, different countries, different views. So I know in Scandinavia they will leave pastons on, and I know in the UK we always take pastons off. So I tend to do feet, leave the pastons fluffy, and wait to see what kind of judge we have the dog entered under as to whether I take them off or not. If you're going to take the pastons short, again, don't do it so short. If I do it close, then actually this is her bone, and then she has this big foot and then a very thin, so she needs some padding on the paston. So never do the paston hair too short. You can thin it off with a pair of straight scissors and just cut it. Always cut up against the hair growth. Never cut across, because if you cut across you will see your scissor lines. So again, I'm almost hovering above the bone, so you don't go too short and make the pastons look too thin. Comb up, and then use your single-sided thinners, going again against the way the hair grows to just neaten your edges, or you can go down to neaten your edges and all those extra bits that stick out. Comb up and either cut down with the hair growth or up against the hair growth, but never across. So again, you just keep going, combing up and cutting, combing up and cutting until you actually have thinned your rear pastern to the desired length that you want it to be. If you look at this one's hairy. So again, I can get my straight scissors, and if you look, I'm hovering against the foot but above it, so I'm not right against the actual bone. That way you have some padding on the hair. Comb up and use your single-sided thinners to tidy all the straggly ends, cutting up, or you can cut down. You can see this is a very overgrown foot that's in desperate need of a trim. He has very long toe tufts in between, and it's very long underneath. It's also important to remember that the Golden Retriever is a rather heavy breed on its feet. It should have good thick padding, but if you scoop out all this hair that is underneath, or you use a pair of clippers and actually shave the hair out and make it very short, then the dog has no protection when it's running over the beach or on stones and gravel over the woods. So the inside is far more vulnerable to being cut or getting sore. So if your dog is very active, it's good to cut level the hair rather than scooping it all out, and just make it level with the pads. See on the back foot, also very long in the pasterns with the hair, really long, and very long toe tufts again. But again, important just to level the hair at the back and neaten the edges when he has his feet trimmed. I don't like the front edge of the ear trimmed too severely. So I generally start about a third or a quarter of the way down, trim that edge and all of the back edge. So the front hair, I think, frames the face. And if you cut this very short, then you have that I've just had my fringe cut look yesterday, which I think is not so nice. So you can see there's a lot of hair on the edge of the ear to come off, but the front of the ear, I will trim it, but it needs to be left hairier. So this is one that's out. And you can see on a little puppy, this puppy is 5 months old, that's it. Thank you. You get a lot of fluff on the back and fluff over here which needs to come out, so we also need to trim that. So I'm going to start with the one in the middle. This is Jodie. With your single-sided thinners is you trim that outer edge. I always train my students and tell people to use the single-sided scissors and not straight scissors, because around the ear edge you have a vein, and if the dog was to move and you cut it with a pair of straight scissors, you have a severe bleed and blood everywhere. But if you make a wrong cut with thinners, you at worst pinch the dog. You're not really going to create so much damage. So you go the whole of the outer edge, with your single-sided thinners. I'm going to turn the ear slightly to get this inner ear fluff, because I think that looks messy. So this is also thinned off to make a very neat short ear. And this side is just the bottom bit and around the curve. And then with this long bit, just what's long, you can basically tickle some of the very long hairs, but still leave it fluffy so it frames the face. The underneath of the ear also needs to go. So I work with the way the hair grows, so I'm cutting this way, not that way, and this way. And on this ear, I would cut up, and this edge so I'm working this side of the dog, or I can turn my scissors and work that side of the dog. Thank you. And then also bend the ear just to curl it back to get those long bits inside. And the front stays hairy, but the very overlong bits, again, you go from far away and you just tickle off the long ends that look messy. Many moons ago, people would hand strip ears. So this fluff on the ear, you would catch with your finger and thumb and basically pull it out. In some of the old books, they say about using a duplex dog dresser, which basically was like a stripping knife, and you could catch the hair and help pull it out. So this is one stripping knife, this is a Mars stripping knife. So there's various stripping knives you can use to catch and to actually pull the hair. I find it easier actually with my finger, just to pull those fluffy bits off. If you don't want to pull, then you also can use thinners, and it's better to actually use your double-sided thinners and just go up against the long hair of the flap to take it off, and to take that long bit from underneath. Do a few cuts and then comb. And then a few cuts and then comb. And you can see I'm still leaving this front edge a little bit hairy to frame the face, not give a severe edge to the ear. So I do 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4, and then comb. And then another 1, 2, 3, 4, this time 5, and then comb. Don't get carried away cutting without combing and looking what you're doing, or you might go too close and then have a hole and then you actually can see skin. So just thin and comb. A lot of coat. She's never had her ears done before. Again, double-sided thinners to take the fluff off from underneath. I do a few cuts on that side, a few cuts on that side. Your scissors won't cut if they're full with hair, so you need to clear that. And then comb. So basically you want to clear bit underneath. The single-sided again to go on the outer edge. It is actually her daughter. Dead. Your mummy. Your baby. So the whole of the outside edge is clean, and the bottom third or a quarter to make the curve. On puppies, I quite like this fluff. So I tend not to trim puppies until the day before their show, because I find it a bit sad for baby fluff to go, because I think it looks rather cute to have the fluff on the ears. So it's more a question of going underneath the ear, double-sided thinners, going up, she says, what's that funny noise? I've never had that before. And then comb the hair. Always better to do a little bit and stop, and then look at your work and think, yep, I need to do more, than to go too mad and go too short and think that looks really horrible. So do a bit and then stop. The outer edge and the inner edge. So the inner side is only the bottom third or a quarter. Shape it round. And then the outside, take the hair off and again shape round that bottom edge. So you have a nice clean line the whole way under the ear and the whole of that outer edge of the ear. Clear your scissors, otherwise they don't cut. You can turn the flap a bit so you have all the hairy inside, and also thin that off. So I've got single-sided thinners to do the edges of the ear. I work this way and I work that way. And if you're doing this ear, then the whole outside edge is clear. Again, clear your scissors, otherwise they don't cut. And the bottom edge, this stays hairy, and it's just the bottom of the ear I'm going to thin. And around that curve. Here's scissors. this way. We have double-sided thinners on the ear flap, going under the hair, cutting up 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to comb. Look what you're doing. Don't go in one area all the time, otherwise you end up with a bald bit. So just make a cut across the flap of the ear, going under the hair, and this thick bit under the ear, and the bit from in front. Then comb down. I think the puppy wants to get back on the table. Just complaining. Okay, again with the other one. Comb. Cut up. Never cut across, because you really will see that scissor line. You only want to cut against the way the hair grows. So you're going upwards and all that thick bit from under the ear. It's up to you whether you actually go with your hand that way, or you can go that way. So I'm going that way, I'm going that way. And comb again. So you want to go under the hair, going up, a few snips into the ear, comb what you've done. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. Just a few snips. And then comb. See what you've done. Be careful you don't get any bald bits, so you need to work around the dog. Always dive in. A few snips. And then comb out. We've already done her ear edges, so we just work all the time going up into those ears in like a pyramid or a triangle. You can feel she's got quite a pronounced breastbone, so you don't really want to go below that. And you also don't want to start too close here, because otherwise you get a very short neck and all this front. So you need a gradual shape. So here we really angle our scissors this way and not flat against the skin. So you get a more gradual from a short neck into the chest, and when you get to the top, then yes, you can go a bit flatter against the skin. It's good after a while just to stop, let the dog get down and run around, have a look what it looks like, hold it a treat, see what it's like when it shakes and stands naturally, and how much more you actually need to trim and you need to do. It's always better to do too little and then go back and do more, and suddenly find you've taken out far too much hair. Here she's quite heavy with hair across the shoulder. So I'm doing a few snips under the hair. And then you don't spoil the top coat, you're just taking the coat out from underneath. You can see all that hair that comes out. We work up the neck in like a ladder, going up to the base of the ear. And a little bit of this fluff from the top of the ear and behind the ear. She likes holding a teddy, don't you? And what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So again, the bulk from the shoulder, we're going underneath, comb out. And then go up like a ladder. Behind the ear and into the bottom of the ear. And then comb out what you've cut, so you can see and make sure all the time that you don't have holes or you cut too much or you get bald bits. I'm working up the shoulder line. Cut, 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 cut. Going as if you're going up a ladder and working into the ear. Cat's come to say hello. Pussycat. Wants to help with the grooming. And then comb out the hair. And then go again. Cut, cut, cut. Always going under. One snip, not too wide. Dive under, do a cut, comb it out. And work into that ear base. And what you do on one side, you want to do on the other. This is a puppy of 5.5 months, and he's already used to these noises of the scissors. He's just had a bath. I think it's his 5th bath so far. And then I'm going to comb. So always you're working up and you're working out like a pyramid or like a fan, fanning out from the base of the ear, and then you get a clean shoulder and a smooth neck. Here we have a darker coloured coat, and you can already see the undercoat on here is pale. So if you cut the top coat, then he's going to have a big pale patch. So it's much harder to thin with dogs which have this paler undercoat and a darker overlay. It's much easier if they're completely dark or completely blonde. So again, we would go under, do a snip, working up into that ear, and then comb. Under. And again, always working up into the ear. And if the ear is too fluffy, you can also take some off behind the ear. And then you want to comb. And what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. I'm going to go cut under the coat, dive under the hair, again working towards the ear base, and then you comb it out. And you keep going. It's better to do little and often. Have a look, see the shape of the dog, see the balance, see what more you need, and then you can stop. So the front of the ear I'm tickling with my thinners to make sure this long bit stays long but a little bit tidier and fitting to frame the face. Going with the ears is the whole front bit of the dog. The technique is with your double-sided thinners and to snip up. You want to dive in like you're swimming in a swimming pool. So you dive in, you go underneath, so you're along the bottom of the pool, and you do a cut. Not so wide that you're pinching loads of hair, but more a dive in and a cut, a dive in and a cut, a dive in and a cut. Then you want to comb, and then you go again. So this is a technique you can all practice. Practice makes perfect. A clean dog is always helpful, because if you clip through or try and cut through a dog which is not clean, then your scissors have to work much harder with the grease in the coat. They don't slide so easily if there's dust in the coat or sand in the coat or mud in the coat. So a clean coat is always better to work on. So it's cut and comb. What you do to this side, also do to that side. Don't just do one side of the dog, because if somebody phoned or you had to stop for whatever reason, it's better to have a symmetrical dog than a dog that has one side done and one side not. If you're unsure of the shape, then again, trim a little bit and then stop. Always comb through to check your work. So you're diving under, you're doing a snip, and then you're combing out the hair. And when they're nice and clean, then your scissors actually glide very well. And if I try and do a dog which is not bathed, then my scissors don't glide. They sort of get stuck and you're sort of chewing at the coat. So from under the ear, we're going to work a bit behind the ear with all this fluff and a bit into the crest of the neck. The idea is you want the dog to look like it has a long neck, because a long neck is good for carrying big pheasants and birds as they were intended over fences without them clipping the fence. So a golden should have a neck of good length. It shouldn't be over long. So if your dog had a really long neck, then actually I would say don't trim so much. And if it has a good neck, you can actually still live it with a bit of coat. So you always want to work against the hair and going towards the base of the ear. So from the side, we're also going to do that shoulder line. And the same, we go under, snip, 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 and then comb. On dark dogs, you have to be particularly careful to go under the coat, because otherwise you see a blonde patch of undercoat and it's very two-toned, which I think looks horrible. So underneath, a few cuts, and then comb it to lie flat. If you're working up the neck, you work from behind the shoulder line, going like a pyramid into the ear. So here would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cuts. I comb it, and then if you go up the pyramid, the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cuts. Still working up my pyramid. We've had 7 cuts, 6 cuts. I now go to 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, and comb it. Then I'm up another level, 1, 2, 3, and comb it until you just get the one behind the ear. So you're always working into that base of the ear and into the neck to create a smooth shoulder, a well laid back shoulder, not a bossy heavy shoulder, and to thin out the neck. And this process can go on for ages until you get your desired effect of what you want. So I'm going to stop, otherwise I'm here for the next 45 minutes just thinning. So with this one, again, we're thinning the neck. She's much shorter in coat because she has a new coat going after having her puppies. And again, you cut up and you comb. You cut up and you comb, so you can always see your work. If you concentrate on just one area, you often get holes, or you have an unsymmetrical dog. So it's always better to do a bit on one side and a bit on the other, exactly the same. So try and work symmetrically, one side to the other. Generally, you can feel the breastbone, and what is below the breastbone, you want to leave as a forward chest, but you don't want a step. You don't want to be short and then long like a setter. You want a blend. So at this point, you need to angle your scissors so the base is away towards the chest bone and the front goes in. So this is going close and this is going at an angle. So you get a graduated line into the chest and not a I'm short, I'm long. That looks actually horrible. The whole idea is to have something very natural, very blended, and nothing that looks like I've just been trimmed. You really want it to look like they were naturally like that, with short bits and long bits. So ideally, it's more about enhancement than it is about really scissoring the dog. So thinning, blending, little bits, combing, checking your work. Feathering. The trousers should ideally not come past the point of the hock joint here. So if they are long, you can use your single-sided thinners just to thin the ends that come past the hock and just to tidy the inside. I really don't like short trousers. I like them long. Hers haven't grown. I'm waiting for hers to grow a bit longer. I like quite full trousers. But if you get long straggly bits, you can just use your thinners to thin them off. Try and keep them in a natural, what I call cheese shape wedge, and not a complete block straight down. So use your thinners. If it gets overlong across the stifle, you can also use your thinners just to tickle the edges to trim across the hind angulation. The skirt, it's good to lift the front leg and then you can see the elbow. Her skirt is not very long and she's got quite a good length of leg, so she needs a skirt to deepen her. So I'm not actually going to cut too much off, but if you have very long bits, just use your single-sided thinners just to thin the ends of what is overlong or out of shape, and if there's a long bit on the elbow or the front, and just go across. Again, comb. Don't do too much. It's better to look what you've done, watch them running around, and if you think you need a bit more, do a bit more. Once it's gone, you can't put it back. You have to wait for it to regrow. So it's better just to tidy and tickle and get the silhouette. So it's more silhouetting and enhancing than really cutting a skirt short like that. Personally, I never use straight scissors because that will really give a cut line, so I'm not going to do it. Again, with the front feathering, you could use straight scissors to just cut all those long bits off, but I find the look is too unnatural, so I prefer to use thinners and just tickle off the very long bits. You can also just always check this armpit, because otherwise you've got bits flapping, and if it's long you can thin it off.
Okay.
Like that. Front feathers. You can use your straight scissors and just cut it shorter if you want, but I think that looks rather horrible and rather drastic, and you have a very much a scissored look. So again, I prefer to use single-sided thinners and just tickle off the edges and the wispy bits that I don't want. I try and leave everything natural. I mean, they're not a heavily scissored dog. You want to enhance the dog and make a silhouette and not really severely trim. And I like feathering. So, what I said about the pasterns earlier, I mean, here pasterns are long. Look at the dog's length of leg. Look how much feathering it's gone, and then decide where you want your pasterns actually to go. So if you want them shorter, and if you want this a bit more blended, you just use your thinners to give the desired effect. Again, little and often. Cut a bit, watch the dog running around, look at it, see if you need more, see if it's okay. And what you do to one side, turn the dog around, and do the same to the other side. You can see here she's got a really long bit on her feathering. So I'm going to thin that off. If it's very long, it tends to hang down and look even shorter. So sometimes if it's trimmed, you give it a bit more life, and the feathering can actually look longer because you've trimmed it, if that makes sense. Again, you want to check the skirt line and the stifle, and just comb, tidy a little bit, and look at your work. Last we did feathering on a bitch. This is a dog who's almost 10 this month, and you can see his trousers are past his point of hock here and here. So this is the bit that you would use your thinners just to thin the ends. So comb a bit, cut a bit, clear your scissors, cut a bit again, comb, you can see you get another long bit, clear your scissors. So you don't want any stragglies going past that point of the hook. Same with the inside. If there's something really long, then with your thinners you can thin it off. If you get very long bits, then you can thin it off. It's always better to do a little and then watch the dog running around and see how much more you need to do, what works for that dog. Every dog is an individual. Everyone has different structure. So if I come to the side, you can see he has very long tummy feathering. So with the tummy feathering, again, you want to cut it to the level that fits with the dog. Very familiar with the standard, and looking at pictures of champion dogs, so you know what sort of silhouette you want and what is the required balance for that dog you want. I mean, he still needs his toe taps done. He's got a lot of feathering here on his front legs, which is hanging. He's got an awful lot on his chest and his shoulders. So all of this needs to be thinned. And I would just use my thinners to get it into the shape you want. I would say read, reread, and read again the breed standard. So you imprint the blueprint. That's a good slogan. Imprint the blueprint. So it's too long. I would say this is too short. So you need to... He's an old dog, so I don't think he needs very short feathering. It's better to do it longer, and then you can always go shorter. If you cut it up here, or you cut it here, and it doesn't look good, it's too late, you cut all the hair off. So you better just, with your own dog, to experiment, do thin a bit, and then look in the mirror. Make sure you do these long stragglers in the armpits. And also his leg feathering. So all of this is just with your single-sided thinners. About 46 teeth is good. And you just tickle the ends of the hair to get the silhouette you want. And comb. And keep it balanced. And what you do to one side, you do to the other side, so you don't have one skirt short and then the other one too long. And always look at your dog. Stop, give him a biscuit. When it comes to the shoulders, again, if you have very long wispy bits, you can actually pull out the hair. That means the regrowth will hug the shoulder, which is much better. Feathering you leave on your dog really depends on the construction of the dog, its balance, its leg length, its maturity, its age. So if you have a very deep dog, you might need to trim the skirt more and the legs more because everything is very low. If you have a leggy dog, you might want to leave it all longer to fill in this airspace. The same with the depth of the tail. Not all tails will be the same. So if you have a dog which is very low in the legs and very low, you might need shorter feathering. And if you have a taller dog, you might need a longer tail length. The end of the tail also depends on how the dog will carry it. Does it actually carry it level? Does it tend to carry it low? Does it carry it up? Does it carry it curved? So how you do the tail, it's very good to first watch your dog in its natural stance, see it dancing around, see it playing, and see what it does with its tail and where you actually want to trim from. Not every tail should be cut to directly the end of the bone. That depends how long the tail is. So if you have a short tail that ends there, you don't want to cut it to the end of the bone because it's actually not fitting with the dog that you have a long dog and a short tail. You actually want to leave some extra hair on and cut it to at least the point of the hock or just beyond, so that the tail actually balances with the rest of the dog. All a matter of balance, all a matter of enhancement, and it's all a matter of what fits for that individual and probably for the judge and the country in question, because everybody does it differently, and that's okay. The tail. Feel where the end of the bone is. While the dog has been standing, you decide what length you want the tail and how the dog carries the tail. Feel where the end of the bone is. Decide the length you want to make it. And first, with your thumb over the bone, make sure you never cut the end of the tail. Cut where you think you want the length to be. Sometimes I even do that bit when the dog is standing, so that I know that is the right length of tail for that dog when it's running around. So cut it, let the dog run around, have a look actually is that where you want your tail to end? And then you can actually finish the tail. I, again, like to do tails lying down. You can, of course, do tails standing up. So you can cut the tail straight across. If the dog tends to take its tail up, then it's better to actually angle that line out, because then you have more feathering going up when the dog, you have, look, when you cut here. If your dog tends to just hang it straight, maybe it's better to point it. Most flat coats have more pointy tails, and with Goldens they have more of a curve. She has not got so much depth to her feathering, so I don't really have a lot to trim here, but I like to trim lying down, so I just use my little scissors to make that line. Watch the bit that hangs down by the bottom. Very often you see dogs and they have this long bit here. If you're a bit worried if the dog is moving and you have a pair of sharp scissors, again, you can always change to your thin scissors and thin, or you can do that bit when the dog is actually standing up. And have a look. So for the edge, you comb. You cut. You comb again. You cut. My finger is on the, my thumb is on the end of her bone. I have actually on a few occasions seen people cut the end of their dog's tails off, or even not their own dog, but other people's dogs. So please always, if you bunch the hair up and you have a thick tail, it's very difficult when you're crunching through with your scissors to cut it to actually think, is that actually hair? So you want to keep checking. You comb, you cut, you comb, and you cut, and you comb, and you cut until there's no more wispy bits coming out of the tail, and it's even, and then you can fan the tail out. Just cut the underneath. Again, she's a bit short on her tail feathering, so I actually want it a bit longer, especially because she's got long legs. So hopefully with some time it will grow. She has had puppies, and her puppies are now 8 months old, so her body coat's all thick, but I'm still waiting for the feathering to come in a bit more. So that's how I do a tail. This is hand stripping a coat which is totally dead. This is a girl which has just had puppies, so generally when the puppies are around 3 months old, the coat will fall out. Also, if your dog is going through a big molt, it's good to pull out the dead hair, and that encourages the new hair to grow much better. So you can see where the dead coat is. I just pull, and I have a latex glove on which actually helps get the grip of the hair. How easy all that hair is to actually come off. You have about a week to 10 days when the coat is dead to pull. Use latex gloves. Then you can actually use chalk. Here I have a big bit of chalk. Just going to take the glove off. If you rub your fingers on the chalk, I've got a big piece, I have a little white piece, and I have a fat red piece, and that will make the dog's coat red. Then actually you get a grip on your fingers, and again you can pull the hairs much easier than just with your fingers. So chalk helps you get the grip, and then I just rub my fingers on the chalk. And then you can pull. When the coat is totally dead, it absolutely doesn't hurt the dog. So the coat is dead and ready to come out. So it's just easier to get the coat growth and a new jacket growing if you actually pull out all the dead coat. If you don't want to use chalk and you don't have a latex glove, I also find just water, dip your fingers in, that makes your fingers slightly damp, and that also gives you quite a good pull. If your fingers are too wet, that's not so easy. So you need just dampy fingers, and that also helps you get a really good grip on the coat. You can see she's just wagging her tail, so she just likes the attention, don't you? And I go from under the ear straight down into the elbow, across the whole back, down the legs. Don't pull the actual underneath tummy line. I think that will be too much. Girl which has had puppies and has a coat I have already pulled, so it's all new coat going in. You can see she's very thin in the tail and the featherings, so for most of our dogs it takes a good 6, 7 or 8 months for the full coat to grow back again. You can also see, I'll show you, it's all new coat that has come through. So this is a very tight new coat jacket. She is dirty because she's just been for a walk and not show. You can also see what is growing out that's not pulled is all the bits that need to be trimmed. So the hair on her neck, around her ears, under her ears, the ear edges. The tail doesn't have a lot, but the end of the tail needs to come off. Totally bald dog. No tail feathering, no coat feathering, a lot on her ears, a lot on her neck, that all needs to come off. So you can see the shape underneath and a new coat just growing through with a very sparse tail with hardly anything on it anymore. So it's what I call their Weimaraner mode. Good go. See, with a sterilised coat where you get all these long sprouts which normally would molt out of a dog, and a different type of hair growth. So this is growing over long, this bit is growing very fluffy, so it's all woolly and soft. She's no longer weatherproof, and feathering grows and grows with no sort of cut-off points, natural cut-off points, so you have to trim it far more. And they look rather woolly and unkempt. Lots of hair, so lots more thinning on a dog that is sterilised in general. She also actually has no undercoat at all, this one. Sometimes they have an abundance of undercoat. This dog actually has no undercoat. I don't think we can actually do talking about grooming without speaking about ICT. Here you can see this dog has some flakes in her coat. If the coat is clean, they will just comb out, or you can brush out. If a dog is affected, it doesn't mean it has to be out of the breeding program if it has all its health and it's good otherwise. If you mate an affected ICT dog to a clear, then you will never get it. You won't get it in the progeny. They will just all be carriers. So here you can see as I'm combing, it's really lifting up all those flakes in her skin. So it's something that we can all genetically test for and hopefully not breed in future generations. But any dog with ICT doesn't need to be not shown or not bred from. there are quite a few factors which will affect the standard of your finish. One is actually the coat cycle and how much coat the dog has. This is a new coat all growing in, so whether it's new coat or whether it's coat that is completely bald, this one has no top coat at all, hardly, a few strands, everything's undercoat. How long the coat is, how thick the coat is, how much curl there is in the hair, how straight the coat is. All those factors affect how you will trim your dog, how you actually blow dry your dog. If you have a look at these two, this one hasn't been trimmed in a while, so there's a lot of work to be done. And this one's already quite neat and has had quite a bit of trimming done, so he's not. Trimming your dog, if it's done regularly, is like keeping a neat lawn. It's much, much easier to keep the smart appearance, much easier and much quicker to work on the dog. If a dog hasn't been done for a while, then it's a bit like cutting the grass that hasn't been cut for 6 months or even a year, so it's a complete overhaul. When you are bathing, sometimes you will get out hardly any hair if the dog's not molting. Other times there's a lot of undercoat, sometimes it's top coat, sometimes it's both. So there's the amount of hair loss to take into account, and also the dog's colour. So how you would trim a darker dog is very different to how you would trim a blonder dog, and that will affect how much you trim, how often you trim, and what you actually do. So the coat cycle, whether they're molting, whether they're in full coat, dense coat, and the colour of the coat very much affects your ultimate goal. Also, how used to the dog is to being done. So if you have a puppy, this one is 7 months, this one is only 4 months, you expect them not to know what's going to happen. So these sit on a table without a lead. I've put the leads on the puppy so they don't fall off. I actually like all our dogs to learn to just sit on the table without leads. So they just learn to actually like the process and just to lie there. And then I try and groom without a lead. So if you have an old dog, maybe the old dog has less range of motion, so it's harder to lift a leg, harder for it to stand for a long time. And if you have a baby, you have to go a little bit more gently because they're not used to all the procedures and the noises of the equipment and the noisy hair dryers and all those things that can affect the way you trim. The other thing that can really affect how you trim is your ability as a groomer. Some groomers will see a lot, and others don't actually get that required picture. So your eye needs to be trained. When I was trimming the skirt on this one, actually, you can see a bit of hair coming down, which I think all the good groomers will think, oh, I really want to snip that bit and level it off. And if you're not so good for grooming, then maybe you don't even see it. So a lot is actually being able to see where the mistakes are and to see what hair needs to go, what hair needs to come, and what sort of length you are planning to groom. The other thing which can affect is actually the quality of your equipment and the quality of your scissors. So how old they are. These are a really blunt pair, which are about 20 years old. So they're good for maybe roughing. Whether you have brand new scissors, how sharp they are. This is actually my very first golden retriever from 1984. This one is from 1986. This is her daughter. So this is a very old photo. And that's some of my other ones. This is when I had my hydrotherapy pool. I also teach all my students to know the different points of a dog. That's very useful if you actually can understand the skeleton underneath the dog, to know exactly how and the shoulder blade lies, where the point of elbow is, where the pastern is, which is the same as the palm of your hand, and then the fingers are the same as the toes of your dog, where the rib cage ends, the pelvis. I mean, all the structure is very good to actually familiarize yourself with the dog's skeletal system and the skeleton, and then the points of the dog, and know what they all are.
Oh, wow, that was absolutely fantastic, Charmaine. And I must say,
that's quite a masterpiece, isn't it?
Yeah, Ricardo, for stitching everything back together and editing it so fantastically. I think it's going to be a really magnificent resource for people to look at in years to come.
Yeah, I think what is good about this tutorial is once it's on YouTube, people can just go to the section they most need to learn about.
Yeah,
and you can bypass other bits. So, if you really have an issue about ears, you can just watch the ears and you can learn a bit more on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So just before we open some of the the floor to questions, I've got a few questions myself. Okay. I'd like you just to say about how important it is to create an enriched environment for your animals, just to keep them in the very best physical and mental condition.
Yeah, well, as probably people know, I had my dogs in England, Bart had his dogs in the Netherlands, and when we came together, we suddenly went up to 13 dogs between us. Then you have a litter or a few litters and you decide to keep. And before you know it, your numbers are very high. So we had a very big group of dogs, and we decided we still wanted to give them the quality of life that they would have had if they were in a small group of dogs. So it just meant more work for us, actually. It meant more walks we had to do. We like to have our dogs happy. I like to condition them into their behavior rather than saying no. So it's very much rewarding what you want and almost ignoring the bad. We try and get everybody to the beach. We like going to the sea. We like them running through the dunes. We also go a lot through the town. They love to free run. It blows the cobwebs out of their heads, and I think it also is very good mentally for us. Yeah. So we take them in turns to run across the beach, to go swimming, to free run. We also take them to road walk through the towns and see more social life. To parks, yes, they roll in mud. They get covered in mud. They're naughty. They can go in the ditches. They love to see people. They love to go to parks. We often go to restaurants and have them a few at a time under the table with us at a restaurant, to McDonald's, wherever they go. So I think they have to, even though we have a large group, they all have to have their turn at being a normal family dog, seeing normal life. We don't exclude anyone. They all have a variety. So over the week, they've all had hopefully a chance for not only a road walk, which is an hour and a half, or a free run of 2 or 3 hours, but a walk through the town and to the shops or to a restaurant. And
that mental and physical health is really going to shine, isn't it, in the show ring?
Absolutely. And I think also your way of handling. I think if your dog is happy and you reward the good and you give positive reinforcement, then they work better. I find Golden's incredibly sensitive, and most of ours hate being told off and get very upset if you're shouting. So they need the positive reward. So even if I was standing for show, I would never say no if they step forward. I would only wait for them to step back and then reward them with food and say good. So I wait for the positive movement, the required behavior, and then reward what I want rather than telling them no all the time. That's just the way we do it.
Yeah. Oh, it's lovely. Thank you. And any tips for care of the older golden retriever coat? Because as you've already said, they get very thick. Don't they?
Quite a lot of our older ones have been sterilised, and we also have a lot of older ones which have never been sterilised. That very much depends on how many litters they've had. So the one on the left, she was my first ram chain champion. She lived till she was 13 and a half. She was sterilised quite early because she never actually had any puppies because her hips were rather high, her hip score. So we decided never to breed from her, but she was made very well and she moved very well. But because she was sterilised young, she ended up with an enormous coat that we had to contend with. With Jazz, she lived till she was 15 and she was never sterilised, but she had 4 litters. When they get older, they tend to sleep more, and because they're lying down, they compact the coat more. So nails grow longer because they're less exercising. So I actually groom them more. But I work around the dog, so I don't make them stand. I sort of think, if you're in this position, I trim that bit, and if you've turned around that way, I trim that bit. And I think the most important thing, we've had quite a lot that have lived till they're 14 and 15 years, is to exercise them every single day. Every single day they go out. They're the first ones I walk off my day, is take the old ones, often with puppies, but take the old ones to stretch their legs and to walk. Our old ones, even at 15, will still be walking for half an hour, 40 minutes, twice a day. And I think if you keep them mobile, then you help keep their joints mobile. And if they have some muscles on their skeletal frame, they can always stand up. They're less likely to be incontinent. And for me, they live much, much longer.
Yeah, thank you for that. And then you've already actually pertained a bit to ichthyosis, and
it's a hot topic, isn't it?
It is a hot topic. I noticed I hadn't really appreciated it, but when they do have ichthyosis, is their skin always black like that?
No, it very much varies. You can have black flakes, you can have brown flakes, you can have blonde flakes, you can have flakes that look like breakfast cereal and ready break. You can have hardly any flakes, maybe just some in the armpits or the chest or the trousers, or the dog can literally be covered all over, including its skull, forelegs, ears.
You know when you were showing the video, Charmaine, and you were blowing the flakes out.
Yeah.
Why didn't you brush at the same time? Would you just bring more flakes to the surface?
Mainly because I couldn't hold the phone with one hand and the dry with the other hand, and the brush and the comb. If I didn't have my phone in the other hand, then yes, I would be brushing the same time I would be blowing.
Okay, that wouldn't bring more flakes out.
It absolutely would, but it gets rid of them.
Okay.
So the main thing with ICT is we can now do a genetic test. So there is no reason to not know the status of your dog. If you look at this puppy actually is an ICT affected puppy, and we did keep it. This is actually an ICT affected champion dog, which is ours, and she has only been mated to clear dogs, so she has never produced it herself. If you mate every carrier and every affected ICT dog to a clear, you will get rid of the problem in the next generation. But it is a thing you have to weigh in with everything else. Temperament, construction, type, everything has to go together. So you also have to look at the pedigrees and see what it is you want. I mean, actually with Jasmine, she was tested ICT clear. She had 4 litters and all of her daughters have produced it. So that just shows that you can actually end up going backwards. We have just kept a puppy which is from an ICT clear mother, mated to a carrier, but the puppy we keep actually also is a carrier, not a clear. But she was the best puppy in the litter. So it's important to keep the best puppy in construction, character, type, as you would in any litter, without the regards to ICT, I think.
Can I just ask a very leading question, because I've very little experience of this ever causing a problem, but as a groomer and as a veterinary nurse, have you ever had experience of ICT causing major skin problems?
Yes, definitely. And mainly it's never with show people, because show people bath their dogs frequently and keep them clean. The main issue is if a dog is unkempt, not groomed, has a buildup of undercoat, the skin goes under the undercoat is shedding and it becomes trapped. If that dog is then wet in the rain or sweaty or goes swimming, you get a moisture buildup and you get bacteria, which can cause skin infections and bacterial infections. And I would say it's a bit like keeping your underwear on for a week or a month without washing. If you change your underwear every day, everything's much fresher and cleaner. So if the skin is groomed regularly and bathed regularly, it's not going to cause a problem because air can get through. But if there's a backlog of those flakes developing and bacteria is involved, then yes, you can get a problem. And it is not something you can solve with a diet or feeding or something like that, but you can improve it by the level of oil in your dog's diet. But if you give a higher level of oil and fat, you also run the risk of getting lipidosis in the eyes. So you have to keep everything in a balance.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, very interesting, very interesting. And it was well worth keeping her, wasn't it? She's gorgeous.
Absolutely, yeah. So if we have a litter, I would say I test after we've decided what we want to keep.
Yeah.
Because then I know the status of the dog. We have everything here is ICT tested. It's just a cheek swab. You just take cheek cells, you sell them off to the laboratory, and you find out what status your dog is. And it just gives us room to play. So if we have a free bitch, we know we can use an affected dog, and we know we can use a carrier dog and not produce it.
And I think
that makes us look at others.
The value of the genetic testing, isn't it, is that you're using it as a tool, not as a weapon.
Absolutely, yeah. It gives you a bigger insight, and it gives you more idea of what you can do and you can't do. If you have a free bitch, basically you have a free for all of using any stud dog you choose from. And just because we have a free bitch doesn't mean we will only choose a free dog and have all free puppies. We will also look at affected dogs, because it means you can use an affected dog if it's good. And actually, of the past, there have been a lot of superior stud dogs and champions and wonderful males that are ICT affected. And you can still have them in your pedigree and end up with clear progeny from those dogs by careful selection and luck, because you can go backwards with it and you can go forwards with it. So a lot is an element of luck, but there is no need to breed it anymore. That is the thing. You can avoid it by mating a carrier to a clear, or an affected to a clear, or a clear to an affected, or a clear to a carrier, if you want to keep certain lines going.
Yeah, thank you. And then I wanted to ask you, you originated in the UK show scene. We can be a little living on an island, we can be a bit incestuous, but you've had that privilege of moving to the Netherlands, and you've shown all across Europe. And I feel very privileged that I've been able to judge widely across Europe. So I think I've seen quite a lot of differences. But I'd like to know what you as an exhibitor have found with the major differences.
At first, when I first came here, it was wow. I mean, what an amazing show scene. I think in the UK you're rather blinkered into your own ways, your own systems, and that's just the way we do it. And then when you're actually showing abroad, you realize there's a whole different system, and the FCI system is very good. What I would love ideally is a hybrid between the two, because the FCI system has its failings, the UK system has its failings, and I think if there was somewhere in the middle, it would be great. One of the things I think is a fact, on the FCI system, you generally get a critique at every single show.
Yeah, I think that's
wonderful. The plus points and the failings of your your dog according to that judge. If after 12, 15 shows, they're all saying you need more return of upper arm, or you are rather straight and stifle, or your tail set's not so good, you get a good picture of your dog. In the UK, you can be fourth, you can be fifth, you can be shortlisted, you can be thrown out and not placed at all. You have no idea what the judge didn't like about your dog. And I find that rather sad, that you've prepared your dog, you've bathed your dog, you've exercised your dog, you've travelled, you've gone to a show, you've done all those things, you've paid the same money as somebody who's won, but you don't get a critique to say it's good or bad. I think even if in the UK they didn't do a critique on everything, to actually have the grading of excellent, good, or unsatisfactory would also be good. Because if you had a big class or even a small class, at least you know whether your dog got an excellent or a good. And I think if you had a big class that has 30 in it, for the judge, if you're only giving excellence and those only with the excellence come back, it means you have the better 12 or the better 15 out of that 30, then everybody back in the class to choose again. But yeah, I quite like the grading system, and I quite like the fact you get a critique on everybody. What I find a bit sad on the FCI shows is after you've been in junior and intermediate, which is the same as our yearling class, which you go up to 2 years of age, you have to go to open. There is no in-betweens like the graduate, postgraduate, mid-limit, limit. So if you have a dog which is 2.5 or 3, you're straight into open with older dogs. And that I find a bit of a shame. I would like another filler class, but there isn't one.
Yeah.
And what I found really an eye-opener, and what I didn't know, is that every country has its own rules under the umbrella of the FCI. So the rules for making up a champion in Germany is very different to the rules in the Netherlands. And that's also different to Sweden and to Denmark. So it was quite interesting to find out what that country needed in order for you to make a champion. So for example, in Germany, you can actually win the CAC for each class. So you can win a CAC in the intermediate, which is yearling. You can win from the working class. You can win a CAC in the open class. You can win a CAC in the champion class. So if you take 4 dogs and all 4 dogs win, you have a chance of winning 4 CACs in one day with every dog. You actually need 5 to become a champion, but you also need 1 calendar month, a complete calendar month, between the first one won and the last one won.
It's not
so
like,
you can have, we have had a young dog which had 30, it might even be 4 CCs depending on the show. We have had a dog which had 30 plus CACs, but not the calendar month. So he's still not a champion until that month is calendar year. Calendar year.
Yeah.
Calendar year. He got over 30 CACs, but he had to wait the whole year before he was made up. If you look at this photo of Trevor in the mud, that's him winning in Norway, where he absolutely got totally plastered. It was just a mud bog. But you can become a champion because you are in the champion class and you win the best. He won best of breed. So because he was already a champion in his own country, an international champion, he was in the champion class. And by winning in Norway, the CAC and best dog, he became a Norwegian champion on that day. So you don't have to keep going back to Norway to get the number of CACs. And that is the same rule in quite a few countries, that if you're already a champion in your own country and you show in another country you win, you can become a champion on the day.
And the other thing is sometimes the ticket doesn't go to the winner, because if they've had their allocation.
That was also an eye-opener. That was a rule in Denmark when we went. It's also a rule for Sweden. We took Jade to Denmark for a 2-day show, and I was thrilled the first day that she won the champion class. She became a Danish champion, and the next day she also won the champion class, and she went best of breed, and actually she was placed in the group, but she never even got the certificate or the ribbon or anything to take home, because the CAC went down the line because she was already a Danish champion, so she didn't need it. And then it goes down the line. So actually you could be 4th in open or 4th in champion and become a champion on that day, or the CSA goes to you because you didn't have it and you weren't a Danish champion. Also, what varies quite a bit is the number of shows per country. The Netherlands at one point had 17 shows in a year. It went down to 13 shows in a year, and then back up to 15 shows in a year. I know if you go to Sweden, when we first started showing, they were 72 shows in Sweden. In Germany, there were shows almost every weekend outside in the summer and not a lot in the winter. In Luxembourg, you only have the 2 all-breed championship shows and 1 club show. So it's a maximum of 3 shows the whole year. And I think in the UK, you have almost 2 a month. 42
sets of tickets.
42 sets. So if you also, if you'll get that Luxembourg champion title, you've only had 3 opportunities in 1 year to do it.
Yeah.
And if you're mating a bitch, or you have puppies, or they're not in coat and the show is on, you don't get another chance. You haven't got a calendar year to plan for it. You just have that 1 or 2 opportunities, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was actually quite an eye-opener, that every country has a different system and different rules, and there are different ways of doing it. And there are some titles which are easier to get than others, and some are harder. In the Netherlands, you need 4 CATs. You also need the dog to be over 27 months. So if it wins its CATs when it's younger, it still needs to win one after closing 27 months of year before it can become a champion.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, every country has its own rules, and that's been quite interesting to learn about.
So, well, thanks so much, Charmaine. We're going to throw the questions out to the audience now, if they want to type into the chat. And I'd like to thank everybody for attending today, and particularly to everybody who's worked so hard to pull this off, including Anna and Ricardo, and also Bart for filming you too. So I hope you've all really enjoyed it, and it's been lovely to do this again, because it's been a few months since we did our last Tea Time chat. And
oh, I'm sorry, Penny, it's just to say that the chat function is open, but to advise people when writing to change to everyone, so that you can read it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Thank you, Anna. So it's just saying. Thank you everyone for your techniques. Your dogs are obviously very patient, putting up with a large amount of hands-on, and we're habitated with a grooming environment and equipment. What would help non-show or non-working Goldens feel comfortable, so that the grooming process is not a punishing experience for them?
Ours are all groomed very regularly. Like I say, I like to bath ours every month, because I like to kiss them and touch them a lot, and not have a smelly dog. It's a personal one-to-one. They get a lot of kisses. They get a lot of personal attention. It starts from babies. So from a young age, they're in the bath. They're being dried. It's not a scary experience. No. I really don't like grooming with the frames or the stock, what I call the stocks, where you have to keep them in a fixed position. So when they're young, if they want to sit, they sit. If they want to stand, they stand. If they want to lie down, they lie down. And if they turn around, they turn around. I don't make them stay in a particular place. I work around them. As they get older, they begin to understand what you want. And lying down, yep, they just fall asleep and let you do it. And standing up, they know that I don't want them to sit because I'm doing their trousers. But when they're puppies, if they were standing and then they sat, I would just do something while they're sitting, and then I make them stand again, in time. So I don't force them into any one position and say, you have to do this. It's more working around them, so that they actually come to love that one-to-one time. They actually want to be on the table, and they actually find it a source of affection. And yeah, I mean, all our dogs enjoy it. We haven't had one yet, even as puppies, that have not liked the dryer. They just find the dryer comes with kisses. I never use food, actually. Never do bribery, never do treats, not with my grooming clients, not with our own dogs. They do it for love, and they do it for affection, but not for food. I'm not into bribery. I just want them to enjoy it.
I think as well, it's keeping up with the repetitiveness as well, because the only time that my dogs really dislike it is if they've got a bit matted, if they've got lumps, and then I would never pull on those. I would tease them out very gently,
slice them out with a pair of scissors.
So that it's not painful. And grooming them regularly and making sure the coat's in good condition, I think helps a lot with that, doesn't it?
Yeah, and if they are matted, then I would say when in the bath, some extra conditioner Just helps the mat slide out after. And a clean coat is always easier to deal with.
I noticed when you were in the bath, Charmaine, was it a Zoom Groom you were using to get the coat out with some conditioner?
Yeah, they're rubber Zoom Grooms, and they're great at working through the undercoat and getting out dead hair. I think there's nothing worse, especially if you're judging, to touch a dog and have dead hair falling out when you go over it. So if they're going to molt, I just think get it out. Get it out and let it regrow. You know, there's been many a times you've gone to a show and you put the dog in a bath and you think, oh no, all the coat's coming out. But if it's coming out, then I just get it out. I'd rather not take the dog to the show than go and have it falling around everywhere.
Kerry asks, what do you feed your dogs?
We feed Eukanuba and Royal Canin. So we have our basis is dry food, because it's a lot of dogs to feed, but they have a lot of extras as well. So they have bread, they have biscuits, they have bananas, apples, carrots, broccoli, cabbage, tripe. They have a lot of extras with it. Pasta, rice, we give a bit of everything. So every day they will have some sort of fruit or veg. But their basis is dry food.
Fiona asks, can you please explain what you mean by sideways pressure on the scissors?
I was I would say one of the worst for that when I started grooming. I ruined so many new pairs of scissors that I bought. Being rather excited to have qualified as a groomer, I then invested loads of money in all sorts of expensive scissors, thinking they would let me cut better and groom better, and I ruined them all and lost hundreds and hundreds of pounds. Sideways pressure is when your thumb and finger go together. So instead of just an easy cutting action, you're grinding the blades of the scissors together. So basically you're putting a left to right pressure on the blades together, instead of just letting the scissors work by themselves with no pressure between the two blades of top and bottom. And that sideways pressure is like a chewing action, and you actually blunt the scissors very quickly. Scissors also are a bit like using an ink pen. If you use an ink pen for your writing, that pen molds to your way of writing, and you will mold and wear down the nib according to what pressure you put on the nib. If you use a pair of scissors, you also will mold those scissors to the way you are cutting. So sometimes if somebody else used your scissors, they would find them blunt, but you don't. And if you use somebody else's scissors, you could blunt them for them because of the way you put your sideways pressure on. And if you noticed, some of my scissors had hairbands wrapped around. That was because when I worked in my shop and I had 9 groomers, we all identified our own scissors, so that you didn't use somebody else's scissors. So I would never let somebody use my scissors, and I would never use somebody else's scissors. If anyone comes for grooming, any student would always have to bring their own scissors, because you will put your own sideways pressure on scissors, and that depends on each person.
And they kind of bed into you, don't they?
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, I was interested in what you said about scissors, because actually I, more recent years, tended to buy those quite expensive Japanese ones that will last me for years without even having to sharpen them. But I think because of my background, I probably are very used to using scissors properly. And therefore probably not putting that undue strain on them.
No. If you, I mean, Buttercut is a very good make, and yes, there are some superb Japanese makes, but you need a light-handedness to use them, and a clean coat. And if you have an old dog or a sterilized dog with big thick coat on its neck, and you use a sharp pair of scissors, they will cut, but they will blunt much quicker than a cheaper pair.
Thank you for that. Sophie says, thanks for a brilliant presentation. How would you deal with staining around the sanitary area? I would try and avoid letting my dogs pee on concrete if that was the causative factor. or if you've got a problem with
most staining is caused because of leakage or dampness. So if the hair is slightly damp, then it's more likely to go brown or pink or orange. If there is bacteria in the hair, it's more likely to go brown or pink or orange. And some food can create brown or pink or orange hair. So if your dog has salmon or salmon oil, or any food that's based on salmon, because salmon are pink, that can often cause a pink discoloration in the hair.
It's the thing they feed the salmon, isn't it? It's artificial.
It's like flamingos. I mean, flamingos go pink, and because of the food they eat, otherwise they're not pink. And then you find what I call the sweaty area. So between the toes, the lip folds, under the ears, around the eyes, the armpits, the groin, under the anus, around the anus, all those sort of areas often go orangey. And the best way is to change the diet. Some people say adding extra vitamin C, lemon juice or apple cider vinegar can help internally cleanse the skin and the regrowth. It's very difficult to actually get the red off. You can try whitening toothpaste. If you put toothpaste on the dog's coat, if it's not going to lick it off, and you can try lemon juice on the actual hair, see if that cleans it off. But generally, if you always clean the area, dry it with powder, then the hair that regrows is no longer pink or yellow. So it's easier to get good hair growing through than it is to try and get it off the hair that's already pink or brown.
Thank you. Kerry's just sent a picture for you to have a look. Just share that with you. Can you see it? Thank you for that. Yeah, I'll stop sharing and go
kiss your
back.
dog. Always kiss your dog. That's very good. Whenever you can, kiss your dog.
How long do you normally take to groom a dog from start to finish? That's from Francesca.
As long as it needs. I don't like to rush dogs, so I don't like to put myself on a time limit. I would say a good thorough bath is an hour. To dry completely is an hour. And to cut the hair, well, all depends on when it was last trimmed. It's like cutting grass. If you cut your lawn every week, then you just skim the lawnmower over and it's done. And if you haven't cut your lawn for the whole year, then first you have to hack it down a bit, and then you have to cut it, and then you have to wait 3 weeks and cut it again. So timing is also dependent of whether the dog is cooperating. I mean, if the dog's going to sit there and just lie still while you do its feet, you can do its feet. It takes me 10 minutes and I've done a foot or 2 feet. But if the dog is moving and wriggling and pulling its foot back and doesn't want to be done and putting up a fight, then that actually takes far, far longer than a dog which is just going to sit there and let you do it. So if I would say on average leave 3 hours to bath, groom and trim. And on average, I would say 1 hour just for trimming. But again, it really just depends on when the dog was last done and how well behaved the dog is and how big the goat is.
Yeah. Okay. Evelyn asks exactly which sections while trimming the Goldens do you use the double-sided thinners?
I use double-sided thinners on shoulders and necks mainly, and the fluff of the ear flap. And then singles for the finer work. So singles more on the ear edges and the toe tufts and silhouetting feathering. But double the work is double the scissor. So if you have a lot of hair on the chest and the neck, I would say that's double the work. So you need double-sided scissors. Okay. That's how I remember it.
Ingrid says, how long before the show do you bath your dogs? I find it different because of different coat types. If it's a double day show, do you bath again after the first day?
No, I definitely would bath again after the first day for myself. I will just spray them with water and back brush them to get some air in, or maybe re-blow them after I've wet them, but I wouldn't re-bath them. Yes, it does depend on the coat type. I have done dogs in the morning before a show, in the evening before a show, and 1, 2, or 3 days before a show. It really just depends on the dog. There are even some dogs with really big coats that you need to bath a good 5 days before a show in order for the coat to settle, because otherwise they're just one big blown up puff of a mess. And so it very much depends on the coat. And if they haven't got much hair, then almost the night before or the morning of the show is best to just blow some air in with the blaster before you go.
And Ellie asks, I see untrimmed and dirty dogs in the ring, which I find confusing. However, as a judge, do you find grooming an important part of the presentation? And if they are groomed wrongly, can it affect your decision? Sometimes I see dirty dogs placed. Personally, I would never show a dirty dog or untrimmed dog. And I'll just put my worth in, because I think as a judge, you are judging dogs.
Absolutely.
It's not a beauty show.
Yep.
So if you find a dog that isn't maybe presented to the best advantage, but it is the best or within the best group of dogs, you should still place it, in my opinion. Yeah, and you find very many lovely, very well presented dogs that are not good representation of the breed, and they win often when they shouldn't, just because they look beautiful with their beautiful handler.
And I think that really comes across to the FCI, v the UK judge, v the breed specialist, and breed the all-rounder. As a judge, you are there to judge the dog. It's conformation and how close it is to the breed standard. The breed standard says nothing about giving a dog a bath. I mean, it's all about the conformation and its construction. What you're doing with trimming is enhancing the good points and trying to disguise the bad points. So when the judge is looking at a lineup of dogs, it sees those silhouettes and it says, oh, I like that, I like that, I like that. If you have a clever judge, it's felt, I like that, I like that, I like that. And it's not looking so much at that silhouette, but remembering what it has felt when it touched the dog. Because you can very much blow in forechest and trim in forechest and then feel the dog, and it has no breastbone and no return of upper arm at all. But to everybody else, it looks like that dog has forechest from the ringside. Likewise, you can feel as a judge where the last rib is, and whether it's a very short rib cage and a very long loin, or whether the dog is well ribbed back. But maybe the person on the ringside can't see that. So a lot of the trimming is enhancement. And yes, I wouldn't go to a wedding or to a date or somewhere if you hadn't had a bath and you hadn't done your hair. And I mean, even for this talk, I thought, let's repaint my toenails. So, you know, you want to present yourself to the best of your possibility. If you were going for a job interview, you don't wear dirty jeans and tomato sauce on your shirt. You go presented. My dad always said, when you buy a horse, you look at the hooves and you look at the teeth, you know. And I think when you go to a show, I also look at the handler and how they are kitted out for my personal appreciation of that handler, but it has nothing to do with the dog. So yes, I think, wow, they look smart and they look lovely. I also think, wow, that skirt might be too short, or that dress might be too frilly, or there are different attires that you think are more appropriate for a nightclub than for a gun dog. But you are looking at the dog itself, and the coat is the icing on the cake. So it should be the confirmation.
Yeah. Lindsay and Joke say thank you very much. Kerry is asking, what is the tooth count in the double-sided thinning shears?
30 or 32 for double and 45 or 46 for single.
Thank you. Anne and Mary say thanks very much. And Ellie, also, what brush would you carry in the ring?
None. I never brush our dogs in the ring. I brushed them before, and I use a bristle brush or a pin brush and a quick comb, and I go in the ring with nothing apart from my dog, my lead, and my bait. That's it, and a bum bag. I never brush in the ring. So
because you've done all the work before.
Yeah, I've brushed them and presented them beforehand, and it's a gun dog. I think that the judge should appreciate it for a gun dog. It's not about who has the most pristine coat. That is great, and if you're going over a dog and it's clean and it's got a glorious coat, that's wonderful to feel. But as a judge, you're going past that.
I have different brushes. I agree with you about the slickers, some soft and some a little bit harder depending on the density of the coat. But to finish the dog off, I've got an old-fashioned Mason and Pearson hairbrush that I've had for 40 odd years. Yeah. And I always, that's my last, that's my last brush over.
Yeah. I think also what you have to bear in mind is in the UK, you are not allowed to have any product on the dog's coat whatsoever, only water. And so I must admit, I'm very much used to that fact that you just put water on the dog's coat and you just back brush it, and then you just brush it with a bristle brush into shape. In Europe, you're allowed to put all sorts of finishing products and sprays and mousse and all sorts of things on a dog's coat to enhance it, and that's just not allowed in the UK. So I think you have to be careful when you get to crufts and places if foreign people do come over to show in the UK that they don't have product on their dog's coat. If somebody did complain and you won, then your award could be taken away if that dog's coat was tested and be found to have a product in the coat.
Interesting comment from Mary Neal says, you do realise there's going to be a lot of Goldens bathed and trimmed tomorrow. Martina, Maria, Tina, and say thanks very much. And Evelyn says, I love it when you said reward the positive. Your dogs are beautiful, and thank you for sharing your experience. Cindy says, thank you for a wonderful grooming tutorial. Could you repeat the brands of shampoo and conditioner you like to use on your dogs?
Yeah, you have to actually try different on different dogs to see what brings their particular coat up best. And it also varies on the coat cycle. So some dogs need a volumizing shampoo to give them more body. And if they have a big coat, they would need less because otherwise they look too puffed up. Wheat germ shampoos are generally good for Goldens. Coconut shampoos are generally good for Goldens. I like the Chris Christensen brands, which is gold on gold, white on white. Not allowed in the UK because that changes the coat color. You can get the day-to-day, which is allowed. I do use conditioner to help remove undercoat and to feed the coat structure, but I find just conditioner left on the coat makes the coat far too heavy, far too silky, far too flat, far too slidey for grooming. So I put conditioner on and then actually wash it off with shampoo and rinse the dog. I personally love John Frieda. That is my favorite shampoo. That is a human shampoo, it's not a dog shampoo. I have tried a multitude of dog shampoos. When I had my salons, then we got 5 litre bottles of all sorts of different types, and I think there is no one great shampoo. It's what works for that particular dog and gets the effect on that dog. So you just have to test run a few.
Is there any major difference between human shampoo and dog shampoo?
Cheap human shampoos contain far more salt, so they're more drying out for the dog, so they're generally not so good. I think any shampoo, if it's rinsed off properly, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Because the main thing is if you leave shampoo in the coat and it irritates the skin, and how long the dog is sitting in the shampoo for to irritate the skin. So basically, if you're using human shampoo, you wash the coat and you rinse it off, and you make sure that the dog is thoroughly rinsed. And like I say, you use the cold water after. You're not going to damage the dog's skin or the dog's coat.
No. Why do you wash the conditioner off?
Because
does that not defeat the object of putting it on?
No, if you put it on, it still feeds the hair, so it's better than not using it.
Yeah. Okay.
But I really find for a golden retriever as a work breed, they shouldn't have a silky coat.
No,
they shouldn't.
No.
And if you use conditioner, you often get a really soft and silky coat.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel then weatherproof or does the job it's supposed to do as a gun dog.
They lose the texture, don't they? They go, yeah.
And I don't think actually a golden retriever should have, it might feel lovely. So I think for a grooming client that was just in for a bath or whatever, it's like, oh, a lovely soft silky coat, beautiful. But it's not a correct texture for a golden retriever.
Yeah, I find it interesting because I tend not to use conditioner because I find that it increases my drying time.
Absolutely. If you end with it, if you wash it off with shampoo, then you go back to yes. But conditioner will definitely make it longer and actually give it harder to get that finish.
Harder. Yeah. I find that. So I tend to use very good shampoo with you know, sort of like your pertaining, you know, oat milk or something with some oil in it or something, but not.
If you don't use the conditioner, I often find the ends of the hair stick up more.
Okay, yeah.
So you need more of the drying coats to get the curls. You get a curl over the shoulder, you get a curl at the tail base, you know, that tail flick goes up. And if you've had conditioner on, then the hair is easier to mold.
Yeah.
After. Whereas I find it, if I have tried a dog without conditioner, then I get far more curls and hair flicks than if I have used conditioner.
One of the biggest things that I've seen in the decades that I've shown, when I first started, people would come in with very minimally prepared dogs. I can remember Lucille Sortel with, you know, quite untrimmed dogs and probably not having had a bath, you know, and lots of curls and things around their back end. And one of the things that I can see in the presentation of a lot of the newer and more show orientated people, that the presentation is very different from that, and it's very sleek, and quite often the coat looks very flat to me.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's too artificial. It doesn't look natural anymore, and it looks like a very plush, over trimmed, over scissored, over sculptured breed. Personally, I'm not keen on that. No. I mean, I went to a show in Sweden once and had a mature male standing in the ring, and the judge said, "Why didn't you trim its feathering?" And I thought, why should I? I mean, he's a mature dog. For me, he looked beautiful. I'm thinking, I don't want to trim his feathering. No. But I think they wanted a tidier silhouette. And I actually think feathering is part of the charm with age. Yeah. You know, when they're juniors and they're young, they haven't got it yet, and you're waiting for it to come. Yeah. And then as a mature male, yes, their feathering will be longer. But I find it lovely. And I think if they have the leg length to carry it, they should be able to have it. Yeah. And I also think any judge should go past the feathering and judge the dog underneath it, and not actually want you to have trimmed feathering shorter when I think actually a dog looks beautiful with a full coat.
No, the other thing I can see is when I first started, my dogs when they were younger had much less coat when they were young than the young dogs now. People seem to be breeding for a much heavier, maybe longer, denser coat.
I often find our puppies have huge puppy coats, and then they go through that junior stage of and you just think, oh, you finally get and get them into junior, and there is no coat. And here, because we have intermediate till 2, I find the whole of that intermediate or yearling class very difficult if you don't have a dog which has the breeding to have more coat, because the majority of ours are real teenagers and they don't have the feathering or the body coat. They have enormous puppy coats, and then it goes, and then you just have to be patient and wait.
way. Yeah. And as you say, at that stage, if they've got good length of leg, they can often look quite rangy and gangly and things.
That's the benefit of having more than one dog, because you can choose a different dog to show and wait on the other one.
I know. I quite often see dogs where, and this must be a sort of more of I think a European trend, where they have been cut with a pair of straight scissors all the way along underneath.
Absolutely.
And they've kind of lost the shape of the body and the loin, and I mean, Goldens don't have a tuck up, but they do have a little bit of a waist.
It's a little bit of a raise. Yeah.
You would expect
a little bit of a slope.
That. Yeah, I know, but you can obviously.
I went to the World Show once, and I was actually horrified with the amount of dogs which had no feathering, or the feathering really shortened, from trousers, from tails, from tummy feathering, from front leg feathering, chest feathering. I mean, it was just gone. So yes, the dogs still in a way look beautiful, but almost like an Akita or a different breed, which was so short and plush and never had the long feathering. And I found it an enormous shame. But if dogs like that are winning, it almost becomes a trend. It almost becomes a fashion. And I would say UK judges and people who show in the UK generally are far more natural in their trimming and the appearance they want the Goldens to have than from the Eastern European countries, I would say, which are far more severe in their grooming and their trimming.
And what you were saying before, this is something that I absolutely, as a judge, I keep on banging on about it. The silhouette is the typical representation of the breed. And if it's been altered so much by either cutting too short or cutting the wrong shapes in, like it's not uncommon to see a Golden trimmed like a setter.
Yeah.
And that, to me, you don't want them keel fronted. You don't want that alteration into the shape, because it's incorrect for the breed.
Yeah. And
when your blueprint in your head is right, when you see these things being done, you look at it and you think, oh my goodness, what you have to look again.
Yeah. I think that also is the advantage of being an all breed dog groomer, because if you're going to trim a miniature schnauzer or a giant schnauzer or a soft coated Wheaten Terrier or a West Highland White Terrier or an American Cocker Spaniel or a poodle or whatever breed it is, you're very much learning each breed's peculiarities and the blueprint and the standard for each breed, to try and understand them, to try and get that silhouette and that shape in your head, so that you can replicate it when a dog comes into your salon. So you very much are looking at other breeds. And that's why I actually said it's very important to look at lots of pictures of champion dogs from the past to the present, not just now. I mean, go through the yearbooks, go through the internet and look at champions of the past as well, and really imprint that blueprint. I mean, read that standard, reread that standard, and really get a feel of what kind of silhouette you are trying to create.
Yeah, and I think within that, Charmaine, it isn't just the standard. You have to understand the fit for function of the breed as a going back. And I know you and I aren't necessarily working our dogs as a gun dog retriever dog, but that actually also tells you an awful lot about how that silhouette should be, like not having some of the heaviness, the long and low that we sometimes see, the disproportionate, and that having the understanding that silhouette is the sum of all the parts of the dog is so very important, isn't it?
I think, first impressions in the ring are often the most. And when dogs enter the ring and they all run around, and you're just watching them, then often you think, like it, no, yes, no, yes, that gives you a huge impression. And before your hands are on those dogs, a lot of that is due to presentation and the way the dog carries itself. So yes, at that point, how you've trimmed the dog can really influence of whether you think you like it or not. You then have to put your hands on it and feel after.
Yes,
but I often think, with ringside judges, with the ringside people who make comments, they haven't got their hands on the dog, and you don't always know what the judges then felt, or what it's seen and why it might put a dog further down the line that you like, or something like that. But silhouettes are very, very important. And, when it comes to something, say, for example, the neck, I mean, I did say it in the trimming, if you had a neck which was extremely long, you don't want to trim it and make it look like a giraffe, because that is a weakness. If that dog was carrying a heavy pheasant or a big hare, that it had such a long neck, because it can't be as short and as strong as a shorter neck. But if your neck is too short, then your head is too near your feet when you're jumping, and you're going to clip a fence or clip your feet on the bird, and there's not enough neck to carry the bird or the hare away from your body. So you need to trim to give that desired silhouette. That is the art of grooming. You can actually sculpture and mold to hopefully create the picture wanted, and that is the art of being able to.
And that's also such an important point, because every single feature of the dog has the ability to be too much or too little. And as you're saying about the harmony and the way a dog all fits together, when people ask me what is a long neck, what's the correct length of neck, to me, the correct length of neck is when the dog can bend down and pick something up off the floor without going down on his shoulder. And that to me is how long their neck should be, whereas you do see that overreachy, over-necked dog, and those necks are often weak, and they're often not set correctly into the head and shoulders. You kind of have this rather alert, sort of upright appearance to it, and they're not strong. A lot of the other retriever breeds are not asking for a good reach of neck. The Labrador, it's you want a moderate. And I think we have to get away from this looking always for exaggeration. You actually, for a correct silhouette, often want that middle ground. So not overdone, not underdone. And it's quite hard to quantify because there isn't a measurement.
Not in our standard. The Golden Retriever standard is very vague. It leaves a lot to interpretation and a lot to your own ideas. So what I might read into it is different to what Bart might read into it, which is why we often keep two puppies from a litter and why we have so many dogs, because he likes one and I like the other. But the same with different breeders. I mean, what also the faults one might consider more important to them, you might find less. So people evaluate things very differently. I mean, for me, something that doesn't bother me, say, for example, is the colour of the nose. I mean, the standard says preferably black. It doesn't say anywhere that it should be black.
And it's funny, isn't it? Because some things that really are not all that important can really irritate you, like a light eye. It doesn't do the dog any harm. It doesn't do, but you
often can find meanness, you think. But no, I'm not keen on. I like dark eyes for expression. But the other thing was ears. I mean, Jasmine in particular
had big ears,
had huge ears. I mean, she was Dumbo as a puppy. I mean, enormous ears. And I remember being at a show when she was probably about 9 or 10 months old, and the judge got her ear and put it to the inner corner of her eye. Well, it went past, and it just said,
go to the tip of her nose.
Ears are too big. And I thought, where in any standard does it say our ears have to meet the inside corner of the eye? It doesn't say that anywhere, not in any standard of the Golden Retriever. So I just said, in the standard, it doesn't say that it has to reach the inner corner of the eye, or even whose eye, because I thought it was so long, it could have reached anywhere. But
you didn't get a place, did you?
I won the class, actually. I still won the class, yes. But I just thought that is something, so many things in our standards say moderate. but what is moderate? Moderate to you and moderate to me can be two different things. So
Oh, that's fantastic. So we've got quite a lot of other people commenting about how much they've enjoyed your talk, and good to hear you also like natural looks in the show ring. Over-groomed and sculpted Goldens are so sad to see in the ring, and thank you for a good webinar from Ingrid. And I think that's the last comment, so I think we should say, Charmaine, many thanks for sharing all your wonderful knowledge. You're a wonderful teacher, and I would say that I'm sure in your grooming school that you may well be able to recruit some of some more students from here, because there's so much to learn and so many different techniques. But you know, you have departed a lot of your knowledge, and I think it's been a wonderful seminar. Thank you so much. I know everybody's really enjoyed it, and
no, I've very much enjoyed speaking and sharing, and having had plenty of students in the past, and teaching lots of people to become professional groomers of all breeds. It's really quite a passion for me. So it's been nice to be able to show everything. I mean, I'm retired now as such, that I'm in the Netherlands. I mean, I haven't got all those salons anymore, but you always have an interest in it, and it's always a deep passion, and so it's been a good topic to explore.
Yeah, absolutely fabulous, and it's been lovely to talk to you as always so bright and vibrant and happy, and it's just wonderful. And the video will go onto YouTube eventually once we've had a chance to go through it, and you know, Ricardo has done his magic of
he was an absolute star. I mean, Ricardo has done it incredibly. I mean, our 9-year-old son did some of the footage filming, which in lockdown you just think, who's going to film for me, because a lot of this film has been done over a period of a year, over a year, putting it all together. So it's been a long while, and Ricardo has had a lot of patience in all those little snippets of adding them together. So thank you, Midland. Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, Anna, and big thank you to you, Penny.
Yeah, you're most welcome, and thank you, Anna, as well for all your support and help, and for making it happen. So yeah, good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Anna. Bye-bye, Ricardo.